Chapter 3677. When Xiao Chen came out of the shower, he felt as if he had shed a layer of skin. Muyaja had bathed him, but it was as if he was washing clothes. He wanted to roll him into a ball and rub him on the washboard. He felt as if his bones were about to fall apart. When Xiao Chen came out of the bathroom, he did not see Lisa and Yu. He walked around the rooms suspiciously. When he passed by the balcony, he suddenly saw two figures in the backyard. He narrowed his eyes and walked over to the door. He saw Lisa and Yu with their backs to him. They seemed to be talking about something. "Lisa, after being in Hurricane for so long, you're the person I trust the most." Yu turned around expressionlessly. He sized up Lisa and asked in a low voice, "Is Gong Xiaoying lying to me?" When Xiao Chen saw this, he held his breath nervously. He did not know how Lisa should answer. Lisa was a member of Hurricane. Would she betray Gong Xiaoying? Just when Xiao Chen was feeling uneasy, Lisa smiled and said calmly, "Gong Xiaoying is indeed lying to you." "Why would he lie to me?" "There are two reasons." "Two reasons?" Yu frowned and said suspiciously, "Tell me." "First, you're his grandson. You're his family. Naturally, he wants to keep you by his side. Second, you have extraordinary talents. He wants to make use of you to complete the Devari project." When Yu heard this, he could not help but fall silent. He was a little sad. He did not expect that the man he trusted so much would make use of him like this. "I lost a lot of my memories." The boy sucked in a deep breath of cold air. "Do you know why I lost my memories, though?" "Because," Lisa hesitated for a moment and immediately said, "Alice hypnotized you." "Hypnosis?" Yu was a little suspicious. "Xiao Chen was also hypnotized, but you said that the hypnosis failed." "Why did his hypnosis fail, but mine did?" Lisa frowned and hesitated. "Because you're different from him." "What do you mean?" Yu was a little unhappy. "Are you saying that my beliefs and willpower are not as strong as his?" "Because you have too." These words stunned Yu. He didn't quite understand what Lisa was trying to say. "What do you mean I have to?" Lisa explained. "Alice said that you have two personalities, one full of sunshine, the other full of darkness. As for hypnotism, it made use of this point to use the second personality to kill the first personality." At that time, Alice was also very surprised. This was because, generally speaking, for people with dual personalities, the second personality would never be able to replace the first personality. However, your first personality had really disappeared from your body. Your first personality was the Yu that everyone was familiar with. After your first personality disappeared, all the memories of your first personality were sealed up. Yu listened, but he didn't quite understand. He didn't know that he had two personalities. He also didn't know what dual personalities meant. Lisa explained it to him again. Then, he vaguely understood. "So, you're saying that the second personality is controlling me now?" "Yes." Yu asked tentatively, "Can I go back to how I was before?" Chapter 3678. Lisa also shook her head. Alice said that there can only be one split personality. Otherwise, there will be a day when one's mind is destroyed. There can only be one split personality between the first and second personality. If you can really go back to the past, then the current you will disappear. Yu was stunned when he heard this. The current me will disappear?" "Yes." Then, Yu suddenly felt suffocated. "Will all my memories of the present disappear as well?" "Just like how you won't be able to remember everything that happened in the past. Because in the past, you had two personalities. One was very gentle and kind. The other was a destructive personality. If you want to get something, you will become cruel and unscrupulous. You will even pay any price." Yu fell silent when he heard this. He suddenly lowered his head and looked at his hands. He gently curled them into fists and then relaxed them. The feeling he got from his hands made him feel that he was still alive. However, Lisa said that if the two personalities existed at the same time, they would reject each other. Finally, one day, the mind would be destroyed. However, was the current him going to give up this body to the previous Yu? He couldn't do it. Every personality was selfish. He wasn't willing to leave this body because there was a longing in his heart. Although he didn't say it and didn't express it, He really wanted to stay in this family and become a part of it. Then, Yu said dejectedly, "If I leave this body, will the previous Yu return to this body? Maybe. If he disappears, he might not be able to come back." Yu looked a little stunned. He knew in his heart that others didn't know, but he knew that the previous Yu hadn't disappeared. In other words, the first personality hadn't disappeared from a body. It still carried the memories and was sealed in the depths of the body. He would often dream of that child. That Yu was trapped in a prison. He could often see him and talk to him. He had dreamed countless times that he was traveling on the sea with a child. He was wearing a black shirt, and the child was wearing a white shirt. The child was running nonstop, and he was absorbing the child into his body. Then, Yu disappeared. He took his place. It turned out that the child was another personality. He had no way of knowing. He only thought that he was the invader, another version of himself. He never thought that the two personalities were two completely different entities. Why? He had to create him. Why did he have to compete with a child for a body when he was the one who created him and brought him to this world? He also wanted to exist. But how should he exist? Yu asked calmly. "Compared to me, they probably prefer the old Yu, don't they?" Lisa looked at him in surprise, but didn't say anything. "Daddy is one. Mommy is one. Lily Chin is one. And so is Yue Yao? Including you, Lisa, right? Compared to me, you want the old Yu to come back, right?" Chapter 3679. On the other hand, he wasn't needed, wasn't liked, and didn't have any value in his existence. Lisa couldn't say a word for a long time. She didn't expect Yu to be so sensitive as to say that. However, it was the truth. Lisa missed the Yu of the past, the gentle and kind Yu. However, her heart ached when she heard what he said. Xiao Chen's voice suddenly came from behind. "You're needed." Yu was stunned. He turned around in shock and looked at Xiao Chen. Seeing him walking toward him slowly, he didn't know what to do. He said unhappily, "Why were you eavesdropping on our conversation?" "What do you mean by eavesdropping?" Little Chen said matter-of-factly, "I'm clearly listening openly." Yu was speechless. "Who said you're not needed? Whether it's the Yu of the past or the Yu of the present, we need both of you, not one less." Yu couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. He pursed his lips and said coldly, "What if you had to choose between the two Yu?" Xiao Chen was stunned when he heard this. He asked in confusion, "Why would I have to choose between the two?" "Because there's only one personality in this body." Yu looked at him with a burning gaze. "If you had to choose, which one would you choose?" Xiao Chen was speechless. Yu already knew the answer. He didn't seem to care, but he was a little disappointed. However, he still maintained his cold expression and said calmly, "Your choice is definitely not me, right?" Xiao Chen hesitated. "Is there no other choice?" "No." Yu smiled again. "Actually, you've already told me your answer." As he said this, his face became cold again, and he brushed past him. Xiao Chen stood rooted to the ground in a daze. For a moment, he couldn't come back to his senses. Lisa looked at Yu, who was walking away, and felt a suffocating pain in her heart. She could empathize with this kind of disappointment and helplessness of not being needed. Lisa's heart ached. She really didn't know how to choose. If it really came to that point, whether it was Mu Yaja, Yin Shishir, Xiao Chen, or Yue Yao, they would all choose the Yu of the past, right? Even he himself seemed to have made such a choice subconsciously. What about the Yu now? Was she really not needed anymore? "Mommy, mother's ancestors to know how long's not to be heard." "What's the matter?" Yin Shishir didn't notice the loneliness and hesitation in her son's voice. Now that Xiao Chen was back, she wanted to show off her cooking skills and cook a table full of delicious dishes. "Mommy, do you know that Yu has dissociative identity disorder?" Yin Shishir stopped what she was doing. She turned around in confusion and looked at Xiao Chen. Frowning, she asked, "Why did you suddenly bring this up? One is the gentle Yu of the past, and the other is the Yu of the present. If you had to choose, which one would you choose? Is it the Yu of the past? Why must you make such a cruel choice?" Yin Shishir was a little worried. "No matter who it is, Yu is still Yu, isn't it?" Chapter 3680. Xiao Chen continued, "If you choose the current Yu, then the old you will be completely destroyed. If you choose the old you, then the current you will also disappear from your body. Yin Shir frowned slightly. Mommy, don't you want the old you to come back? Yes. Then, what about the current you? Yin Shir suddenly fell silent. She sighed. I don't want to lose any of them. In the study room, Yu sat on the chair and looked out the French window quietly. He suddenly felt a little envious. He had never envied anyone, except for Yu. It was only when he became part of his life that he started to feel envious. The old Yu had led such a happy life. Every night, Yin Shir would read him a bedtime story. Even though he always felt that such stories were childish and ridiculous, he would fall asleep without nightmares as he listened to her gentle voice. In the morning, Muyaja would wake him up for a morning run. He gradually fell in love with such a life. It was a life where he could rely on and be relied on. Yu led such a life for 8 years. But he had never had it. Just like what Lisa had said, if he had never had it, he would not have longed for it. However, once he had it and tasted happiness, it would be extremely difficult to give it up. Yu turned around. The desk beside him was where the old Yu used to work. His fingers gently caressed the solid wood surface of the desk. The smooth and slightly cold touch made him feel a little lost. Just like this desk and everything here, it did not seem to belong to him. He had no choice but to accept all of this logically and with a clear conscience. However, he felt a little unwilling to give up this position. What the old Yu cannot do, he could do. What the old Yu could do, he could do better. He wanted to stay. Yu suddenly stood up and stood in front of the bed. He gazed at the scenery in the garden. In the back garden, beautiful Chinese roses were blooming proudly. Have the 2 children successfully reached the capital? Ashland Island. Gong Xiaoying sat on the bed in the bedroom. This bed used to be Yu's bed and Xiao Chen's bed. His subordinate immediately replied, As far as I know, the 2 children have returned to the capital. Gong Xiaoying's eyes were filled with surprise. Yu. We searched along the way and found the yacht they were on when they left. There was a corpse on it. According to our analysis, it was the corpse of a pirate. Gong Xiaoying became nervous. Pirates? Did they encounter pirates? A few days ago, the yacht was probably caught in a storm at sea, so they turned back and encountered pirates. After a pause, he explained, But I don't think they were hurt. They hung the corpse on the pole of the yacht as a deterrent. Gong Xiaoying was relieved when he heard this. He was surprised and delighted. He did not expect his 2 grandsons to be so capable. One was intelligent, and the other had amazing martial arts skills. What about Lisa? Didn't she come back? No. Forget it, let her be. She only has one master in her heart. As Gong Xiaoying said this, he waved his hand, and his subordinates left respectfully. Chapter 3681. Everything had come to an end. Whether it was the absurdity, the ambition, or the decades of hatred, they had finally let go. Gong Xiaoying sighed. His back seemed to have aged a lot. It's time to eat. The family sat down at the dining table. The dining table was huge. Even if the 7 of them squeezed together, it was still big enough. Hua Jin had rushed back from the set when he found out that Xiao Chen had returned home. Muyaja and Yin Shir sat on one side. Gong Jie and Yu sat on the other. Xiao Chen and Lisa sat on the other, and Hua Jin and Little Yao sat on the other. Lisa only felt that the attractiveness of this table was simply star-studded. Gong Jie and Hua Jin were especially good-looking. Gong Jie was especially particular about dressing up. Hua Jin had just returned from the set, so he still had a thick layer of makeup on his face. Xiao Chen teased him. Uncle Hua Jin, aren't you going to remove your makeup before eating? What if the powder on your face floats into my bowl? Hua Jin choked and said angrily, Xiao Chen, I was looking forward to seeing you come home. You're teasing me the moment you're back. I'm not happy. That's right. Yin Shir immediately stopped them and said, All right, it's rare that we're happy today. Stop arguing and start eating. Try my cooking. Everyone had already picked up their chopsticks, but when they heard that Yin Shir was cooking, they were all stunned. Isn't brother-in-law cooking tonight? Muyaja said innocently no. After being married for so long, Muyaja was usually the one who cooked. After a year, he had perfected his culinary skills. Although he wasn't as good as he used cooking from a five-star hotel, he was still good at cooking basic home-cooked dishes. Yin Shih rarely cooked. However, whether it was Gong Jie or Hua Jin, they all remembered that Yin Shih would occasionally cook some dark dishes. They didn't dare to eat. Hua Jin said pitifully, "I miss Yu's cooking. I don't know when I'll be able to taste it." Yu frowned in confusion. Was my cooking in the past? When he asked this question, the group of people looked at him seriously and nodded in unison. Gong Jie said, "I've always been picky, but as long as it's your cooking, I can't find anything wrong with it." Yu couldn't help but be stunned. Hua Jin added, "Yu's cooking is very good. At least, I haven't seen anyone who can cook better than Yu." Lisa clumsily picked up her chopsticks. She knew how to use chopsticks, but she still couldn't get used to it. She looked at the dishes and didn't know where to start, because these dishes were all unheard of. After being in Hurricane for so long, she was used to eating Western food and rarely touched Chinese food. Occasionally, she would eat Chinese food, but it was already Western-style Chinese food. She had never eaten authentic Chinese food. "What is this?" "This is steamed chicken. Dip it in the sauce, and it'll be delicious." Yin Shih added, "This is ready-made from the market." After she said that, the group of people rushed to grab the steamed chicken with their chopsticks. Yin Shih couldn't help but feel speechless. They were so enthusiastic when they heard that she didn't cook it. These people must be deliberately trying to undermine her. Lisa picked up a piece of chicken and dipped it in the sauce, as Yin Shih said. She took a bite, and her eyes lit up. Yin Shih's gaze was fervent. "Is it to your taste?" "Yes, it's delicious." Chapter 3682. Lisa finished the chicken in no time and picked up another piece. This time, she dipped it in more sauce. It was obvious that she liked to eat boiled chicken. Yin Shih introduced the dishes one by one. "This is red braised pork. This is old goose soup. This is... What kind of meat is red braised pork made of?" "Pork." Yin Shih probed. "Do you have any taboos?" Some people's religious beliefs forbade pork. Lisa shook her head. "I eat all kinds of meat." Xiao Yiqin shivered. "You eat human meat too?" Lisa smiled. "Of course, if you're willing to contribute yourself." Everyone at the table laughed. The atmosphere became lively all of a sudden. Lisa quickly got used to the warm atmosphere of the dinner. In the past, when they ate in Hurricane, the huge dining hall was very quiet and silent. Everyone sat at one table and hurriedly finished their meal and left. Eating was just to relieve hunger, and it didn't take too long. This was the first time she ate with so many people. At first, she felt a little awkward. However, as she got familiar with them, she also felt that it would be very lively to have so many people eating and chatting together. Hua Jin narrowed his eyes and suddenly said, "Today, I overheard a few extras chatting on set and learned about a very cruel dish." "Cruel?" Yin Shih frowned. "What dish?" "Sanjier." "Sanji?" Gong Jie was curious when he heard that. "Why is it called sanjier?" "Because it has something to do with the ingredients of the dish." Gong Jie's face darkened. "Don't keep me in suspense." Hua Jin was afraid when he saw his expression. He immediately sat up straight and said, "The main dish is a newborn live rat. The person who eats it will use a pair of red-hot iron chopsticks to pick up the rat. It will squeak once, and this is the first squeak. When it is dipped in seasoning, it will squeak again, and this is the second squeak. When it is placed in the mouth, it will squeak again, so it is called sanjier." I heard that this dish is very delicious, but it is especially scary when eaten. As soon as Hua Jin finished speaking, the group of people silently put down their chopsticks. Yin Shih, in particular, felt nauseous. "Live rats?" "It's not a rat. It's a hairy rat. It's artificially bred and very hygienic." "How strange. There are still people who eat rats alive." Xiao Yiqin covered her mouth. "That's disgusting. Uncle Hua Jin, you must be here to cause trouble. It wasn't easy for Mommy to cook a table of dishes, but you ruined everyone's appetite." Hua Jin said innocently, "I'm innocent. I only said it because Master Jie asked me to." Gong Jie said angrily, "If you didn't mention it, would I have asked you? I won't take the blame for this." Yin Shih warned, "You're not allowed to say such disgusting things again." Lisa, on the other hand, was very calm. No one touched their chopsticks. She was the only one who was seriously studying the braised pork. Xiao Yichen asked in confusion, Lisa, don't you feel disgusted? I don't, Lisa said calmly. I've seen people eat live bamboo rats before. The group of people fell silent. That's disgusting. Huajin was obviously disgusted. Actually, it's not particularly disgusting. It's okay. It's just that I don't have the courage to eat live things unless I have no other choice. As Lisa spoke, she put a piece of braised pork in her mouth and chewed contentedly. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. The braised pork is delicious. Chapter 3683. Muyaja took a bite, but his expression was one of disdain. Yin Shishir was unhappy when she saw his expression. What's wrong? Is it not good? It's not as good as you use. Lisa, it's such a pity. You use red braised pork used to be the best. It's just a pity that you didn't come at the right time. Yin Shishir was full of confidence. However, Yu took a bite of the red braised pork and finally gave a pertinent comment. I don't remember the red braised pork I made in the past, but Mommy's red braised pork is very delicious. He had always been a man of few words. However, his words helped to clear Yin Shishir's name. Hearing Yu's support for her, Yin Shishir was so excited that her eyes sparkled. She was filled with confidence. After dinner, Xiao Yichen had just made his bed when he suddenly thought of Lisa. He asked Yin Shishir curiously, Mommy, have you prepared a room for Lisa? How would I have time to prepare a room now? Yin Shishir continued, but Lisa will definitely have a room tonight. When Lisa heard this, she immediately said, I can sleep on the sofa too. How can you sleep on the sofa? It will be very cold at night. Xiao Yichen disagreed. Yin Shishir said, Lisa, can you stay in Yuyao's room? Yuyao's room? Yes. Yuyao is still young, so the room has been prepared long ago. However, who knows when Yuyao will be able to stay in her room. You can stay in that room for now. When Yuyao is older, we could prepare a new room for her. At least for the next few years, I won't feel comfortable letting her stay in such a big room alone. Yin Shishir took Lisa to a room on the second floor. When Yuyao was still in her stomach, Muyaja had personally decorated the princess room. However, he had obviously overlooked the fact that it would take a long time for Yuyao to grow up and sleep alone in a big room. Therefore, this room had been empty until now. Fortunately, there were people who cleaned it regularly, so it was very clean. Yin Shishir had just pushed open the door when she saw Lisa standing at the doorway. She glanced over and felt her heart twist violently. At a glance, everything was pink. The room had a simple American style. There was a small white bed with pink curtains. Muyaja had thoughtfully chosen a bed with a railing. The most adorable thing was that the bed was a bunk bed. There were 2 rows of beds. The lower row was designed with a desk and a row of wardrobes. The top of the bed was designed in the shape of a castle. Other than that, there was a computer, a walk-in closet, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a beautifully decorated balcony. The pink walls, pink curtains, and pink and white curtains were a very harmonious combination. A room like this was very big for Lisa. At a glance, it was about 40 square meters. There was a separate bathroom with a circular bathtub. Beside the bathtub, there was a shower function. She could take a bath and take a shower to satisfy her needs. Yin Shishir squatted in front of Lisa and asked, From now on, you can stay in this room, okay? Lisa blushed a little and said embarrassedly, Then what about Yuyao? Didn't I say that when Yuyao grows up, it's still too early for her to live alone? Okay, thank you, Auntie. Lisa thanked her politely. She looked around the room and couldn't help but laugh. It was all pink for young girls. However, she didn't like pink that much. However, she didn't care about the color as long as there was a bed. Chapter 3684. Yin Shishir took out a blanket from the wardrobe and spread it out for her. Suddenly, she thought of something and said to Lisa, I'll bring you to buy some clothes tomorrow. I'm fine with anything. Lisa was not particular when it came to clothes. Usually, she would wear tighter-fitting clothes. She would wear a combat vest all year round. When there were no missions to be carried out, she would wear the simplest kind of undershirt and camouflage trousers. Clothes were bought according to size. Hence, Lisa was really careless when it came to dressing. How can you dress casually? You can't always dress like a boy, right? A girl should wear a dress and dress up beautifully. As Yin said this, she helped her tidy up her clothes and smiled. Do you know that Yu's father loves daughters the most? When he was pregnant with his younger sister, he kept saying that he must have a daughter. Luckily, it was really a younger sister. If it was a younger brother, I'm afraid he would have given up all his hopes. Isn't it good to have a son? Lisa said, I just wish I was a boy so that I could be a little stronger and grow a little taller. Isn't it good to be a girl? It's troublesome to be a girl. Lisa said plainly, girls will be bullied. When Yin heard this, she was a little stunned. How can girls be bullied? Girls should be protected. Lisa lowered her head and suddenly stopped talking. Yin saw that she was a little disappointed and said helplessly, I don't know what you've been through in the past, but from now on, since you're part of our family, you're as good as my daughter. In my heart, daughters are little princesses. They should wear dresses and dress up beautifully. If anyone dares to bully you, Xiao will be the first to stand up and protect you. Him? Lisa smiled. He might not be able to defeat me. Yin was speechless. As Lisa said this, she clenched her fists slightly. The muscles on her muscular arms suddenly became clear. The lines of her arms were especially beautiful. Her muscles were not bloated, but they had beautiful curves and texture. Yin was so shocked that she couldn't speak. She raised her hand and gently pinched her triceps. She was scared out of her wits. You look rather skinny. I didn't expect you to be so lean. The flesh on Lisa's body was all muscle, without a trace of excess fat or fat. Therefore, even though she looked very skinny, in reality, her strength was even more terrifying than that of a grown man. Lisa smiled. I've been training since I was young. All of this is the result of training. Then you can definitely do a lot of push-ups. I don't do push-ups. That kind of training doesn't work for me. Then what kind of training do you usually do? Lisa raised her eyebrows and took half a step back. She placed her left hand behind her back and used her right arm to do a handstand. She did it steadily without the slightest wobble. Just as Yin was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth, she saw Lisa's right hand, which was supporting herself on the ground, suddenly raise 2 fingers. She used only her index and middle fingers to do a handstand. Moreover, she didn't just do a handstand. She bent her arm and straightened it again. Her handstand was terrifyingly accurate. Lisa landed on the ground and stood up. Her face was not red and her heart was not beating fast. I usually train like this. Yin was speechless. What a terrifying level of training. She trained her body so well. This girl. Chapter 3685. When Lisa finished showering and walked out of the shower, Yin had already tidied up the room. She added a lot of furnishings and even made the bed for her. You're done showering? Yin said as she tidied up the bedding. One blanket shouldn't be cold. It's made of goose down. I also brought a blanket for you, so you might feel hot. If you feel hot at night, just remove the blanket. As she nagged, Lisa felt extremely warm. So, was this how a home felt like? She walked to the side of the bed, but she was at a loss. She said hurriedly, I'll tidy up the room myself. It's late. You should go to bed. Yin stood up and said, I've already tidied up the room. How about this? I know what I'm missing. I'll just buy tomorrow. Lisa smiled. I don't think I'm missing anything. I'm already satisfied with a bed and a bathroom. You're so easily satisfied? Yin brought the pajamas over. However, you might have to be more particular tonight. Wear Xiaoqin's pajamas first. Lisa glanced at the sky blue pajamas in her hands and felt a little awkward. Xiaoqin's pajamas, don't worry. I've already washed them clean. You don't mind being particular all night, right? She didn't mind at all. It was just that. She was just a little shy. Lisa hugged the pajamas tightly and nodded. Just as she was about to change into them, Yin immediately walked over and drew the curtains. She said angrily, Lisa, you're too bold. You didn't even draw the curtains before changing into your clothes. She blinked her eyes in confusion. Yin found it funny too. Perhaps she was making a fuss over nothing. Lisa was still a little girl and had grown up in Hurricane. She was probably used to interacting with men, so her behavior was as straightforward as a boy's, and she didn't care about the details. However, although she didn't have much meat on her, it was better to develop this habit. She was a girl after all. Just as Yin Shirshir was about to leave, she suddenly thought of something. She turned back to the room and asked tentatively, Lisa, Xiaoyi-chin said that you like to listen to bedtime stories too. Lisa was stunned for a moment before she gently nodded. I've never heard of you, but I heard from Xiaoyi-chin that you always read him bedtime stories. I'll read it for you, Yin Shirshir said, and went to the study to find some fairy tale picture books. When she walked into the room, Lisa was lying on the bed with her eyes open, as if she was waiting for something. She sat down by the bed and flipped through a few pages. When she saw the first story, she asked, Have you heard of the Little Match Girl? No. Then let's talk about this today. The Little Match Girl. This was a classic fairy tale. It tells the sad fate of a little girl who sold matches on Christmas Eve because she didn't sell a single match. The little girl hadn't eaten for a day. She was cold and hungry. When she lit the first match, she saw a fragrant roast goose. When she lit the second match, she saw a beautiful Christmas tree. When she lit the third match, she saw her grandmother, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. She wanted her grandmother to stay by her side, so she lit an entire bunch of matches. Chapter 3686. Her voice seemed to have a unique magical power. The words in the book seemed to turn into a vivid dream as Yin Shirshir's gentle voice spoke. Lisa actually fell asleep peacefully with the dream realm as her pillow. Before Yin Shirshir could finish reading the ending, she saw that Lisa had fallen asleep. She looked at the story again and felt that the ending of the fairy tale was too tragic. She thought for a moment and changed the ending. As she tucked Lisa in the quilt, she said, After the last match was lit, the little girl saw her grandmother again. She tried to reach out her hand, but she didn't expect that she would grab her grandmother's hand. It was so warm. She said, Grandmother, I want to be with you. The light from the match gradually extinguished. The little girl leaned against the wall and fell asleep quietly. The next day, people found a frozen little girl curled up in the corner. Everyone pitied her, but in reality, the little girl went to heaven with her grandmother and lived happily ever after. Bam! The lights went off. Yin Shirshir placed the fairy tale at the head of the bed. She stood up gently and left the room. In the living room, Muyaja had just finished showering. When he saw her coming downstairs, he raised his eyebrows and asked, Lisa is asleep? Yeah, she's asleep. Yu and Xiaoyi-chin are still waiting for you to read them a bedtime story. Yin Shirshir's hand, which was holding the glass of water, paused. She said weakly, Daddy, what's the matter, Mommy? I'll have to trouble you with today's bedtime story. Muyaja raised his eyebrows and said, Sure. In the bedroom, Xiaoyi-chin pulled the blanket over himself. He was eagerly anticipating Yin Shirshir's arrival. It had been a long time since he heard a bedtime story. He had been thinking about it for so long. However, just as he was anticipating it, Xiaoyi-chin saw Muyaja enter the room with the fairy tale. He was stunned and sat up abruptly. Daddy, why are you here? Why can't it be me? Muyaja said indifferently, Your mother is unwell. Today, I will read you a bedtime story. Xiaoyi-chin said awkwardly, I don't want you to tell me. Muyaja snorted. Why? Do you dislike Daddy? Daddy, you don't know how to read stories. No matter how beautiful a fairy tale is, it sounds like a curse to you. Muyaja's voice was too deep, so much so that when he read the fairy tale, it was somewhat out of place. If you don't want to hear it, then I will. Muyaja sat on the edge of the bed and flipped open the storybook. Xiaoyi-chin was disgusted and kicked it open. The father and son were in a mess. Yu had already fallen asleep, but she woke up when she heard the commotion. She reached out and grabbed Xiaoyi-chin's face, rubbing it viciously. Yu, what are you doing? Be quiet. When Yin Shirshir passed by the room, she heard the commotion. Curious, she pushed open the door slightly and took a peek. She saw the father and son throwing pillows at each other and arguing fiercely. Xiaoyi-chin, in particular, was red in the face from Muyaja and Yu's joint attack. You two are shameless. 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 I'll fight it out with you. Puffed. These three rascals. Muyaja was too much. He was an adult, but he was arguing with two children. Chapter 3687. The next day, Yin Shirshir brought the three kids to the mall. Besides buying some daily necessities, she also brought Lisa to buy some clothes. When Lisa arrived, she didn't have any clothes on. Now, she was wearing Xiaoqin's clothes. According to the measurements, Xiaoqin's clothes fit her perfectly. Her clothes were too big, and Yu's clothes were too small. Yin Shishir bought a lot of princess dresses for Yueyao. Muyaja had also bought some for her, but they were still too small for Lisa. Lisa was very tall and was almost as tall as Xiaoqin. It was Lisa's first time shopping in a mall. There was a dazzling array of counters and all kinds of dresses and clothes. It was a dazzling sight. Xiaoqin suddenly stopped in front of a children's clothing store. "Mommy, this is the store." Yin Shishir and Lisa stopped to take a look. Lisa's face turned red. "Why are they all dresses? They look quite nice." "They do look nice, but they don't suit me." Lisa had never worn a dress before, so she was a little conflicted about it. Yin Shishir grabbed Lisa's hand and pulled her into the store. "Try it on." Before Lisa could say anything, Yin Shishir dragged her into the store. Yu and Xiaoqin followed closely behind. Xiaoqin was especially enthusiastic about choosing clothes for Lisa. This one is good. And this one, Mommy, look." Lisa stood in the fitting room uneasily. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. She asked, "Who is it?" "It's me." It was Yu's voice. Lisa opened the door and saw Yu holding a dress in his hand. He handed it to her. "Try it on." I picked it out." Lisa's face turned even redder, but she didn't reject him. She took the dress from him and locked the door. After changing into the dress, she didn't dare to open the door and walk out. She kept tugging at the hem of the dress because she felt that it was too low. She felt a little awkward. She felt uncomfortable walking in the dress. Outside the door, Yin Shishir asked, "Lisa, are you done changing?" "Yes, then come out." Hearing her say so, Lisa could only brace herself to open the door and walk out. However, just as she stepped out, she vaguely heard a few gasps, and for a moment, her scalp went numb. "This dress doesn't suit me." A sighs. Yu, on the other hand, but she didn't look surprised. Yu, on the other hand, sat. "Yu, what happened? You look really good in this dress." Lisa was tall and slim, so it suited her to wear a dress that reached her knees. It made her look classy. The dress was simple, but it was beautiful. It was a white blouse and aqua blue spaghetti strap skirt. The design was perfect. There weren't any extra embellishments, but it made her look gentle and beautiful. Xiaoqin walked around her in a circle. He couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes. "Lisa, I didn't expect you to look so good in a dress." Lisa said, You picked it out. I feel that it's too short." "You picked it out?" Chapter 3688. Yin Shishir immediately said, Hey, I picked 2 of them. Mommy's choices are the same as mine." "Lisa, try them on." Yin Shishir was speechless. She sized up Lisa and then Xiaoqin. She felt that there was something fishy going on between the 2 of them. Xiaoqin seemed to be very passionate about Lisa. Was this the boys' first awakening of love? It seemed like there was something going on between them. Lisa carried the dress into the fitting room. After a while, she changed into a new dress. She opened the door and walked out. Her expression was not as unnatural as before. It was as if she had gotten used to wearing dresses. However, she still felt a little uncomfortable. The dress that Xiaoqin had picked was brighter. It was made of organza and had pink embellishments. There was a circle of organza roses at the hem of the dress, making it look as if it had been born from a sea of flowers. There were no other embellishments. Lisa looked like a little princess in the dress. "What do you think?" Xiaoqin looked at Yin Shishir expectantly. "I picked this dress. Does it look good?" Yin Shishir nodded. "It looks good. Lisa is a clothes hanger. She looks good in everything." Yu said indifferently, "It's too gaudy. It doesn't look as good as the one I picked." Little Li Qin did not buy it when he heard that. "What do you mean by gaudy? That's how girls should dress. If Lisa wears it, she'll look like a little princess. Won't she look beautiful?" "I don't think so. It doesn't look as good as the one just now." "Narcissist." "Anyway, Lisa looks good in everything." Lisa's lips twitched when she heard this. She felt like laughing. The 2 of them could even bicker over the dress selection. She really had to hand it to them. "Why don't you try the one I picked?" Yin Shishir smiled. I picked the dress that came in a set. All right. Lisa entered the fitting room again. Not long after, she changed her clothes and came out again. Even Yu Yu's gaze couldn't help but change. It had to be said that Yun Shirshir had been in the fashion industry for so many years, and her taste was incomparable to the two little guys. She had chosen a dress with elements of Han Chinese clothing. It had a light purple sleeve with black trimmings. It was pure and feminine. It had a matte purple undergarment and a pure white skirt. It had elements of Han Chinese clothing, Hu Jiangli and Pai Jishi, and Yu Qiulan and Wei Pei. The jacket was buttoned with a standing collar, and the collar panel echoed the belt. The cuffs are lantern sleeves with decorative lace and intertwining ribbons. There were embroidery details on the collars and double-sided embroidery on the waistband. It was so beautiful that it was out of this world. Even Yu, who was used to having a discerning eye, felt that the dress, which had elements of traditional Chinese clothing, was perfect on her. Very beautiful. Xiao Yichen was also mesmerized. He felt that Lisa was so beautiful that she seemed to be glowing as she stood there. So beautiful. The shop assistant couldn't help but praise. Your daughter looks so good in this dress. Yeah, she's prettier than children's clothing models. With so many people looking at her, Lisa felt increasingly uncomfortable. She held the corner of her dress and lowered her head, not daring to look up. Lisa, take a look around, Xiao Yichen said. Lisa held the corner of her dress and didn't move at all. Don't make things difficult for her. Lisa isn't used to wearing dresses anyway. Not used to wearing dresses? The shop assistant was a little surprised. It's a pity that such a beautiful girl doesn't wear dresses. I have a daughter who loves to wear dresses. She imagines herself to be a little princess. Chapter 3689. Yin Shirshir smiled. That's right. Daughters are more precious these days. Xiao Yichen heard this and felt unlucky. Isn't it good to have a son? A son is also very considerate. The staff was amused by Xiao Yichen's wittiness. This is your son, right? Yes, didn't you see? They're twins. They look exactly the same. The taller one should be the older brother. So cute. Good genes. The staff suddenly looked at Yun Shirshir with a twinkle in her eyes. I suddenly feel that you look familiar. Yun Shirshir raised her eyebrows. Even though she was wearing sunglasses, her facial features were still there. Upon closer inspection, the staff immediately noticed some clues. You're Yin Shirshir, the one who acted in Lethal Beauty. I can't be wrong. I didn't look carefully just now, so I didn't recognize you. I've seen a few of your works. The Green Apple, Lethal Beauty, and Extreme Youth. I've seen them all. When the group of people heard that there was a big celebrity, the other staff members who were busy with their own work quickly gathered around. Yun Shirshir was surrounded in an instant. Lisa had never seen such a big scene before. She was so shocked that she stood rooted to the ground. She was a little surprised and asked, "What's going on?" Mommy is a big celebrity, so I was recognized. Celebrity? For example, movies, television series, actors. Lisa still didn't quite understand. She had never watched a movie before and basically had no contact with entertainment. Xiao Yichen asked, "Do you never watch movies?" Lisa didn't understand. What exactly is a movie? Xiao Yichen crossed his arms and gently rubbed his chin. Half an hour later, Yin Shirshir stood outside the theater with the three little guys. She held 3 movie tickets in her hands. However, because it wasn't a holiday, there weren't many people watching the movie. Lisa doesn't even know what a movie is. I want to take her to watch a movie. Xiao Yichen leaned against the window and stared at the title of the movie on the electronic screen. What should I look at? What style does Lisa like? Yin Shirshir asked. Lisa shook her head. I'm fine with anything. Yu is naturally the least interested one. She sat in her seat with bags of various sizes and held a cup of Coke in boredom. Yin Shirshir glanced at him and felt gratified. Yu loved cola the most. This had never changed. Xiao Yichen suddenly said, "Mommy, didn't you make a guest appearance in a movie called Amnesia Labyrinth? How about an animated movie?" Yin Shirshir continued, "There's a Disney movie that came out recently, and the reviews are pretty good. I want to watch Amnesia Labyrinth. Mommy, were you acting in it?" Yin Shirshir thought for a moment and said, "I think it's a mystery movie. I heard that I won an award for it." "What award?" "Best Female Lead." After a pause, Yin Shirshir said angrily, "Also, I'm not a guest star. I'm one of the main leads. It's just that I don't have as many scenes as the male lead." Amnesia Labyrinth was a high-quality mystery movie. It had to be said that Yin Shirshir's eye for screenplays was getting better and better. This film had won many important awards. There was no mystery genre in the country, but this film had appeared out of nowhere and shattered everyone's expectations. Chapter 3690. It turned out that there were also high-quality detective films in the domestic market. They had high box office sales and a good reputation. Yin Shirshir played the female lead, Yu Qing, in this detective film. Her brother was suspected of being the murderer. She firmly believed that her brother was not the murderer. She worked with a detective played by Hua Jin to solve the case. In the end, they found out that the real murderer was her twin sister, Yushi. In the ending, Yushi was identified as the murderer. It turned out that a year ago, Yushi was sexually assaulted by a few seniors in school. Unexpectedly, she was pregnant. She did not dare to tell anyone until she had a miscarriage when she was 6 months pregnant. She locked herself in the bathroom. When her brother, Yu Xian, and Yu Qing came back, the bathroom wall was covered in blood. Yushi was lying in a pool of blood, unconscious. With hatred in her heart, she started to take revenge and created this serial murder. In order to cover up her crime, Yu Xian threw the stone himself. In fact, the real murderer was Yushi. However, when the police arrived, Yu Qing was handcuffed. The character she was playing was a double identity disorder. Yin Shirshir was a little surprised. She remembered that when she first took on this movie, she had to play a double identity disorder. However, there were not many cases of double identity disorder in the world. Therefore, she had to figure out herself. She did not expect that the person closest to her, her son, would also have a double identity disorder. Let's watch Amnesia Labyrinth then. Xiao Yiqin bought 4 tickets and waited for the movie to enter the theater. After the movie started, the 4 of them entered the theater. At this time in the afternoon, there were not many people in the theater. Moreover, the movie had been screening for more than a month and the box office was almost full. Therefore, the screening rate gradually decreased. In a few days, the movie would stop screening. Xiao Yiqin was very excited. After all, he rarely watched movies and rarely saw his mother's movies on the big screen. Therefore, he was full of anticipation for this movie. In the opening scene of the movie, the female lead, Yu Qing, played by Yin Shirshir, was in the dark. She opened her eyes and saw a pool of sticky blood. She turned around and was shocked to find a corpse. Just as she was about to scream, a hand covered her mouth from behind, and she fainted at once. When she woke up again, she found herself lying in bed with her younger sister, Yushi, sitting on the edge of the bed. As the plot unfolded, the police received a report that a body had been found on the embankment of the river. A serial murder case gradually surfaced. The plot was intertwined, and the scenes were brilliant. There were no superfluous special effects, but the rhythm was just right. Yu Qing had amnesia. Parts of her memory palace were often missing. Yin Shirshir remembered the scene clearly. When she left the library and returned to the dormitory, she realized that the sky had suddenly darkened. When he left the library, it was still morning. However, when he stood at the entrance of the dormitory and looked up again, the sky had suddenly darkened. After asking her roommates, she found out that today was September 10th. But she remembered reading the newspaper in the library on the morning of September 7th. The memory in between had completely disappeared. Chapter 3691. However, when she passed through a small alley and rushed out of the alley, it was already dusk the next day. Her memory was distorted like a maze. What's going on? Xiao Yiqin's curiosity was piqued. It looks like a fantasy film. Yu furrowed his eyebrows, but didn't say anything. He suddenly said, "This is a memory loss." Yin Shirshir looked at him with a complicated expression. "Do you understand?" "Yes." Yu didn't know the plot and continued. "Mommy's character must have a split personality." Yin Shirshir was stunned. The first personality and the second personality don't know about each other's existence. Yu Qing's memory loss isn't actually a case of amnesia. It's just that during that period, her second personality woke up and took over the body. Hence, The first personality didn't have the memory of that period because it was another personality in the body at that time. After a pause, Yu continued. Actually, I'm guessing that Yu Qing doesn't have a sister. Her twin sister, Yu Shi, is her second personality. Without Yu Shi, the real victim of sexual assault is Yu Qing herself. The murderer she's been looking for is actually herself. Hence, when she committed the murder, the personality in her body was Yu Shi and she didn't know about it all. Hence, she doesn't know the truth. Yin Shir widened her eyes in shock. Halfway through the movie, everyone firmly believed that Yu Shi was the real murderer. Without any hints from the plot, Yu could accurately tell the core of the story. That was because Yu really had a split personality. He understood the subtle relationship between Yu Qing and Yu Shi. They were close, but they were enemies. At the end of the movie, in a mental hospital, the male lead, Jie, played by Hua Jin, came to the ward. Yu Qing sat alone on the bed, hugging her knees. He walked into the room and looked at her with heartache. The movie rewound. It turned out that Yu Shi really didn't exist. Back then, because of the sexual assault, because of the twisted hatred and despair, the originally cowardly Yu Qing developed a second personality. The Yu Shi she had always seen did not exist. Many times, when she spoke to Yu Shi in the eyes of others, it was as if she was talking to the air. Her brother thought that she had suffered too much and was sick. Actually, she wasn't sick. It was just that Yu Qing had always thought that Yu Shi was her sister and that she really existed. Back then, the one who was sexually assaulted and had a miscarriage in the bathroom wasn't Yu Shi, but herself. The opening scene of the movie was when she switched from her second personality to her first personality. When she woke up and saw the corpse, she was the one who killed it. At that time, her brother happened to return home. When he saw this scene, he immediately rushed over, knocked her out, and personally disposed of the corpse. It was hatred that gave birth to Yu Shi and his second personality. In the end, Yu Qing finally pulled herself together and killed the second personality with her own hands. In the illusion, she picked up the dagger and stabbed it into Yu Shi's chest. Yu Shi disappeared. The second personality disappeared. At the end of the movie, Jie squatted down in front of Yu Qing and hugged her tenderly. Chapter 3692. However, the three little rascals had serious expressions on their faces. Yu suddenly asked, "Mommy, can the second personality really be killed by the first personality?" Then Yu suddenly asked in a serious tone, and I'm just saying if the first personality of Yu wakes up in my body and kills me, will your heart ache? Yin Shir did not know how to answer. If I disappear, Mommy, will your heart ache? Could she bear to do that? Would she miss him? At the end of the movie, Yu Qing redeemed himself. Then, how could he redeem himself? Yin Shir hugged Yu tightly, and her heart ached for him. She suddenly asked, why can't they coexist, just like in the past? Lisa was nervous when she heard this. She wanted to say something, but stopped herself. When the four of them left the cinema, Yu looked a little down. Xiao Chen saw this and immediately said, "I'll go buy some milk tea. Mommy, wait for me here." As he spoke, he held Lisa's hand and walked towards the milk tea shop. "Xiao Chen, why did you choose this movie?" Lisa complained as they walked. Xiao Chen felt wronged and said, "I've never seen this movie before. I don't know what the plot is." Lisa frowned when she heard this. Her expression was a little solemn. "We can't let this drag on. It's better to put an end to it." "What are we putting into it?" Xiao Chen said angrily. "Are we going to let you use two personalities kill each other? That's too cruel. There's no other way. It's impossible for two personalities to coexist. Sooner or later, he won't be able to take it." "Not necessarily. In the past, you used two personalities coexisted. The situation you mentioned didn't happen either. It's different now." Lisa continued. "In the past, Yu's second personality had always been suppressed by her first personality. Now, the second personality is in complete control, and the first personality is being suppressed very much. The two personalities have never coexisted before, and only one of them can suppress the other. Can you imagine you use two personalities coexisting?" Xiao Chen was stunned. "Perhaps it will really be like in the movies." Lisa frowned and said, Sooner or later, both personalities will collapse. Do you have the heart to do that? Xiao Qin was speechless. He suddenly said, "We can't make the decision for you. No matter what decision he makes, I will always be by his side." He then said to the waiter, "4 cups of pudding cheese." Lisa was silent for a while. She looked at Xiao Qin's side profile and said calmly, "Actually, regardless of whether it's the first personality or the second personality, I also hope that you use 2 personalities can coexist peacefully. However, dual personalities are very rare. At the moment, there's no treatment for it. This is a little tricky. What about Alice? Does she not have a way to cure it? This is not a normal illness, so it can't be treated with any treatment. Alice doesn't know how to solve this problem." Xiao Qin's heart sank when he heard this. "Let's not talk about this for now." Xiao Qin took the milk tea from the waiter and turned to leave. Lisa followed behind him and suddenly thought of something. What if we seal the second personality? We don't have to destroy the second personality. Chapter 3693. Xiao Qin's heart ached as he said, "It's the most painful thing to be trapped in a cage all day." When Lisa heard this, she frowned but did not say anything in the end. There was no such thing as empathy between people. This was because the needle was not inserted into one's body, so one would not know how painful it was. They were not Yu, so they did not know how painful it was for a person to be divided into 2 opposing personalities. When the 4 of them reached home, Yu locked himself in his room. Xiao Qin wanted to follow him in, but he realized that the door was locked. Yu, he knocked on the door gently. Yu's cold voice came from inside the room. "I want to be alone." Xiao Qin retracted his hand. Lisa walked over and said softly, "Let him be alone." But he was like this when he was on Ashland Island. Sometimes he likes to lock himself in his room and isolate himself from the world. Xiao Qin sighed. It was dark in the study room. The curtains blocked all the windows, so no light could pass through. Yu lay on the sofa and looked at the ceiling. Then he slowly closed his eyes. When he closed his eyes, the world became quiet and still. He imagined himself walking into a door. With a creak, the door slammed shut. Yu looked up and saw a cage in the empty dark room. Inside the cage was a child. This child had the exact same face as him, except that his face was excessively haggard. Yu walked to the door of the cage and looked down at him. Suddenly, he squatted down and looked at him expressionlessly. The child sensed the movement and looked up slightly. However, when he saw Yu's face, his pupils contracted violently. He pounced on the door of the cage and grabbed onto Yu's clothes tightly. "Let me out." Yu frowned slightly. He knew that the child in front of him was his other self. He was Yu's first personality. Back then, Alice's hypnosis tried to seal Yu's memories. However, she did not expect that she would accidentally awaken his second personality. The 2 personalities clashed violently. Yu's second personality tried to kill Yu's first personality. However, the second personality was wrong. He did not know that the first personality would never be killed. Although the second personality was in control of the body, he knew that sooner or later, this body would be replaced by the first personality. And he, too, would be like an abandoned, worn-out doll, sealed in a corner with dust, or he would be killed by the first personality. "She wants to see you very much." Yu looked at the child in the cage and said, "In the end, I can't replace you. Sooner or later, you will take back control of this body. What doesn't belong to me will not be mine. You are the real Yu, and I am just a substitute that can't be considered a substitute." After a pause, Yu said calmly, "But before that, give me some time, okay?" Yu in the cage looked vigilant. "What do you want?" Yu did not want to say anything. Chapter 3694. "What?" "Return the body to him." The child in the cage was shocked. Yu stood up and curled his lips into a smile. He turned around and left the dark room. When he woke up from his conscious world, Yu opened his eyes and suddenly stood up. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and gently drew the curtains. At this moment, the sun was shining brightly. He seemed to have made up his mind. He clenched his fists and did not release them for a long time. At the Gu residence, Xiao Bao leaned against the door and looked around. In the bedroom, Chuho sat in front of the dressing mirror. 2 makeup artists surrounded Chuho. One was in charge of doing Chu-Ho's hair, and the other was doing the foundation on Chu-Ho's face. At the side, long gowns were hanging in the wardrobe, waiting to be tried on. Gu Jinglian stood in front of the wardrobe and compared a few gowns. He was obviously hesitant. Xiao Bao tried to sneak in several times to peek, but he was kicked out by Gu Jinglian. The pitiful little guy could only lean against the door and peek. The makeup artist had just finished the foundation. She held Chu-Ho's chin and looked at her. No matter how she looked, she was envious. Your facial features are so good. You look good no matter how you do it. They were in charge of trying on Chu-Ho's makeup. The wedding was imminent, but Chu-Ho did not seem to care about it. If Gu Jinglian had not forced her to take a day off, she did not know how long she would have delayed it. President Gu, do you think the bride should wear a Chinese gown or a Western one? Chu-Ho turned to look at the wardrobe and saw all kinds of different styles of gowns. There were different styles of wedding gowns, not to mention the Chinese dragon and phoenix gowns and the Han and Tang imperial gowns. Just the 7 to 8 meters long phoenix tail alone made her scalp tingle. Chu-Ho asked carefully, "Do I have the right to decide?" Gu Jinglian did not even look at her. "What do you think?" There shouldn't be any." "All right." Chu-Ho shrugged helplessly and sat down obediently. Gu Jinglian picked up a dragon and phoenix robe and imagined it. Then he made a solemn decision. "Chinese style. All right, how about I put on some peach blossom makeup?" The peach blossom makeup paired with the dragon and phoenix robe was absolutely stunning. Coupled with Chu-Ho's exquisite foundation, she must be very beautiful. Gu Jinglian didn't know anything about peach blossom makeup, so he said, "I only look at the effect." "All right." The makeup artists were trembling with fear, afraid that they would miss anything. When Gu Jinglian got married, the makeup artists he hired were all high-end and expensive. Of course, when the two makeup artists came to try on his makeup, Gu Jinglian also tried to be polite before resorting to violence. "If you don't look good, don't stay in this line of work." How terrifying! When they were first assigned the task, they did not expect that it would be to test the makeup of the Gu family's young master's fiancée. They thought that if they did not look good and offended the Gu family, they might not be able to continue in this line of work. Therefore, they put on makeup seriously and meticulously. Just the foundation makeup alone took an hour. Even when they used a magnifying glass to look at it, they could not see a single pore. A person's potential was indeed limitless. With the help of the supernatural makeup skills, Chu-Ho looked at herself in the mirror. Although she only put on a layer of foundation makeup, she looked like a flawless porcelain doll. Her skin was creamy and even more delicate than a baby's skin. Just the loose powder alone was spread on 2 layers. Then, it was time for the eye makeup. Chapter 3695. Gu Jinglian walked over to take a look, only to see that they were only at the eye makeup stage. He pursed his lips in displeasure and said, "Why is it so slow?" The makeup artists were trembling. Was it slow? Wasn't it all for the sake of looking good? Furthermore, it takes this long for a woman to put on makeup. Gu Jinglian asked suspiciously, "Does it take that long?" Of course. Chu-Ho was a little impatient. "Get out." Gu Jinglian's face darkened when he heard this. "Why should I get out? What are you doing here while I'm putting on makeup? Aren't you just here to see the effect? I'll let you have a look when the makeup is done." The makeup artist added, "It takes a long time to put on makeup. After the makeup is done, we still have to wait for the hair to be tied up and for the gown to be changed. It won't be too late for you to have a look when the makeup is done." With such a big devil in the room, they didn't even have the courage to fight. Gu Jinglian was chased out of the room. Xiao Bao, who had been peeking at the door, bumped into Gu Jinglian. The father and son looked at each other. Xiao Bao laughed gloatingly. "Ha ha! Dad, you've been chased out too." Gu Jinglian said proudly. "What do you mean by chased out?" Although it was similar to being chased out. However, it was too embarrassing to be ridiculed by Xiao Bao. Thud! Gu Jinglian couldn't take it anymore and punched the little guy. At this moment, Uncle Fu carried a very heavy box to the master bedroom. Gu Jinglian saw him and couldn't help but ask, "What are you carrying?" The box was red and gaudy. He didn't know what Uncle Fu had brought back. Uncle Fu said, "Oh," and quickly said, "These are things for the wedding room." Xiao Bao got excited when he heard that they were going to decorate the room. Were they? Balloons, ribbons, silk ribbons, and some lights. Xiao Bao got even more excited when he heard this. He pestered Gu Jinglian and said, "Dad, let's decorate the wedding room together, okay?" Gu Jinglian snorted. Lame. When Xiao Bao heard this, he lowered his head in disappointment and looked at him pitifully. Seeing that Gu Jinglian was being arrogant again, Butler Fu immediately pretended to have a sore back and said bitterly, "Old master, my back is hurting again. Help me carry these things to the master bedroom." Seeing this, little treasure volunteered, "Let me carry you, let me carry you." "No, Dad's Gu Jinglian's father." Gu Jinglian glanced at him, walked over, and carried the box in his arms. Butler Fu relaxed a lot and said to Gu Jinglian, "One person isn't enough. Old master, you can be my assistant." All right. He had wanted to wait at the door and wait for Chu Ho to finish his makeup so that he could see how beautiful his bride was. However, looking at the situation, he was afraid that the makeup wouldn't be done in such a short time. Thus, Gu Jinglian carried the box and went to the master bedroom with Uncle Fu and Xiao Bao to decorate. The stylist finally heaved a sigh of relief when the footsteps outside the door left. Chu Ho yawned. Her lips twitched when she heard their sighs of relief. "What's the matter? Why are you sighing?" The stylists looked at each other cautiously and immediately crowded around her. "Bride, do you know that many stylists in the capital don't dare to take on this business?" "Why wouldn't they dare to take on it?" Chapter 3696. Because the man you're marrying is Gu. Young Master Gu. They did not even dare to call him by his name. Chu Ho's eyebrows twitched. What's wrong with Gu Jinglian? Seeing that this bride did not seem to have any awareness at all, they could not help but gasp. "Bride, do you know how scary your man's reputation is in Beijing? There's a saying in the business world that one would rather offend the Mu family than the Gu family. After all, the Gu family is from the underworld." Chu Ho felt that they had demonized Gu Jinglian too much. Actually, Gu Jinglian is not as scary as you make him out to be. The Gu family is also not as scary as you think. At least after interacting with them, Chu Ho felt that other than Gu Jinglian, everyone in the Gu family was quite easy to get along with. Perhaps there was no difference between the underworld and the underworld. She felt that the Gu family was like the chivalrous warriors of the underworld in ancient times. They had a heroic style, straightforward and single-minded. In fact, they were quite simple people. That was Gu Jinglian. He's just a little eccentric. Actually, he's not as scary as you think. The few of them looked at each other, still on tenterhooks. I've always felt that marrying a man like young Master Gu requires a lot of courage. Chu Ho looked at herself in the mirror and did not say much. Although the makeup process was very boring, she did not like to talk too much about her personal matters with outsiders. She knew very well what kind of person Gu Jinglian was. She also knew very well what kind of man she was marrying. Since she had decided to get married, she had already mentally prepared herself for what would happen after the wedding. However, she could not see through Gu Jinglian. If the decision to get the marriage certificate was purely for Xiao Bao, then why was Gu Jinglian holding the wedding now? Originally, Chu Ho had said that the wedding would be simple. There was no need for a big show or a grand wedding. They just needed to go through the procedures. However, Gu Jinglian said, "How can my wedding be casual?" It had to be said that Gu Jinglian was quite particular. Either they didn't have a wedding, or they had to have a grand wedding. Anyway, the Gu family was not short of money or manpower. No matter what, they could not lose to the Mu family in this wedding. At the very least, they had to be on par with the Mu family. He was a typical male chauvinist. Even if he treated others unfairly, he would never treat his woman unfairly. Muyaja had held such a grand wedding for his wife. How could his woman be wronged? Even though Chu Ho felt that there was nothing wrong with a simple wedding, Gu Jinglian felt that it was a once-in-a-lifetime wedding, so it couldn't be done so carelessly. Uncle Fu also came over to persuade her, saying that this was the only wedding in a woman's life. No matter what, it had to be done properly. Chu Ho was afraid of trouble, so Uncle Fu immediately patted his chest and promised that she would not have to worry about the wedding. There's so many people in the Gu clan. Do you still need to worry about them? When the time comes, you just have to sit there, put on your makeup, put on your gown, and follow the procedure. Chu Ho only agreed after hearing this. Once she agreed, Uncle Fu started to get busy. First, he started to think about whether the wedding would be Chinese or Western. Chapter 3697. It was up to Chu Ho whether she should wear a wedding gown or a dragon and phoenix gown. However, Chu Ho said that it did not matter. Uncle Fu immediately agreed that they should just go with the tradition. After walking around the hotels, Uncle Fu was not satisfied with any of them. After picking and choosing, he felt that no high-end hotel was as pleasing to the eye as the Gu residence. Hence, they decided to hold the wedding at the Gu residence. It had to be said that the Gu residence was really big. It was not a problem to hold dozens of tables in the courtyard. The guest list was drawn up. There would be 10 people at each table, but there would only be about 50 tables. Those who came were close friends who had business dealings with the Gu family. Those who had received invitations from the Gu family were all honored guests. After the wedding venue was confirmed, the tricky problem was, in a normal wedding, the woman would be married out of the bride's house. However, Chu Ho did not have a maternal family. This was a big problem. Without a maternal family, where was the best place to get married? The group of people was worried. Uncle Fu usually stayed at the Gu residence, but he also had houses in other places. Uncle Fu suggested that the woman could get married out of his house. Anyway, Chu Ho's household register is under my name. No matter what, she can be considered half a daughter. Since she is already married, she can treat my house as her maternal family and get married out of my house. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he also felt that this was a good idea. Uncle Fu's house was not far from the Gu residence. It was about 10 kilometers away. Chu Ho did not care about anything, as if she was a hands-off shopkeeper. After all, she did not know the rules of a wedding, so she simply left it to Uncle Fu to handle. In the master bedroom, Xiao Bao was holding a balloon and blowing it. The balloon was expanding bit by bit. However, he did not dare to blow it up too much, for fear that it would explode if the balloon was too full. Here, Uncle Fu, tie a knot. Xiao Bao handed the pitifully small balloon to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu took a look and clicked his tongue. This balloon is too small. It won't do. What happened? Look at how big the balloon in your father's hand is. Xiao Bao looked at the balloon in Gu Jinglian's hand and saw that the balloon that Gu Jinglian had blown up with the air pump was 10 times his size. What a big balloon. Gu Jinglian said disdainfully, "Your balloons are useless." Why? I can't fly. How is this possible? Xiao Bao threw the balloon in his hand toward the ceiling, but he didn't expect the balloon to fall down so quickly. What happened? Xiao Bao looked dejectedly at the balloon in Gu Jinglian's hand. He tied a ribbon to it and rolled the ribbon with the back of his knife. He gently loosened the ribbon, and the balloon floated up to the ceiling. The balloon was filled with hydrogen, and Xiao Bao directly blew it with his small mouth. Naturally, it couldn't float. I also want to use this thing to fight. Xiao Bao pointed at the air pump. Uncle Fu suddenly said, "Xiao Bao, shall we compete? Let's see who blows the balloon bigger." When Xiao Bao heard that they wanted to compete, he nodded his head vigorously. Hence, Xiao Bao and Uncle Fu each took a balloon and blew it vigorously. Gu Jinglian glanced at it and suddenly laughed sinisterly. He placed a deflated balloon behind Xiao Bao and started blowing it with the air pump. Xiao Bao was focused on the balloon and didn't know that the balloon behind him was getting bigger and bigger. Uncle Fu was shocked when he saw this. He saw Gu Jinglian holding the air pump and pumping it vigorously. The balloon was getting bigger and bigger. There was a sound. Chapter 3698. The balloon exploded at once. The balloon exploded behind Xiao Bao. The huge commotion frightened Xiao Bao so much that he jumped up from the bed. He was so shocked that he loosened his grip. The air in the balloon immediately escaped and poured into Xiao Bao's mouth. Xiao Bao was stunned as he drank the balloon's air. He loosened his grip and the deflated balloon immediately flew out. It flew around the room and fell to the ground. When Gu Jinglian saw Xiao Bao's intense reaction, he burst out laughing. Ha ha ha! Xiao Bao still did not understand what was going on. He turned around and looked at the remains of the balloon on the floor. Then he looked at the air pump in Gu Jinglian's hand and suddenly understood what was going on. You did it on purpose. Xiao Bao stood up and pointed angrily at Gu Jinglian. He was so frightened that his eyes turned red. Gu Jinglian's face returned to its cold and indifferent expression. No, you're just a coward. You. Xiao Bao pounced at Gu Jinglian angrily. He picked up a balloon on the floor and hit it at Gu Jinglian's head. Gu Jinglian grabbed the balloon from Xiao Bao's hand and hit it at his head. Thump, 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 thump. Xiao Bao's head was hit quite a few times. The father and son wrestled together and started fooling around. Uncle Fu did not know whether to laugh or cry, but it was nothing. As the father and son played around, Uncle Fu minded his own business and hit the balloon. After more than an hour, someone knocked on the door. Master Gu, the bride's makeup is done. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he said, "Oh." When Xiao Bao heard this, he was extremely excited. "I want to take a look." Xiao Bao nimbly got up from the ground. When Gu Jinglian saw this, he reached out his large palm and clasped Xiao Bao's head, pushing him to the side. He stood up himself and walked towards Chu Ho's room. Xiao Bao also followed. The father and son walked to the door of the room. From afar, through the crack of the door, they saw a dazzling red. It was incomparably dazzling. Gu Jinglian's eyes immediately focused. Xiao Bao pushed the door open and saw Chu Ho standing in front of the full-length mirror. He was wearing a long dragon and phoenix robe. Just by looking at his back, one could see that he had a magnificent bearing. His 7 to 8 meter long phoenix tail spread out in a long stretch. Gu Jinglian was stunned. The beautiful scene in front of him made him forget what he should do for a moment. Chu Ho was very tall. Hence, the long dragon and phoenix robe made her body look even more well-proportioned and slender. She was incomparably tall and slender. She wore a golden phoenix coronet on her head. Beautiful tassels hung down to her temples. Her exquisite makeup and seductive eyes were like silk, especially the fiery red flower between her brows and her red lips. She was dazzlingly beautiful. Even though Chu Ho had a good foundation, even without makeup, she was much more beautiful than the average woman with makeup. However, there was still a big difference between makeup and no makeup. Thick black eyelids, thick and long eyelashes, a perfect amount of blush, fair and translucent, delicate and smooth skin. It was actually a stunning sight. Wow, so beautiful. Xiao Bao walked over carefully, trying not to step on Chu Ho's phoenix tail. Gu Jinglian also came back to his senses and walked into the room. Chu Ho's back was facing him. She was still looking at the mirror and examining her makeup. Even she herself was stunned by her flawless makeup. It was too beautiful. This was not makeup. It was simply a disguise. Chapter 3699. So beautiful. So beautiful. Xiao Bao jumped around Chu Ho. She was breathtaking. Gu Jinglian stopped behind Chu Ho. He calmed himself down and suppressed his emotions. Pretending to be calm, he said, "Turn around and let me have a look." When Chu Ho heard this, she did not expect Gu Jinglian to be there too. She turned around in surprise. However, when she turned around just now, the sunlight in the room was overshadowed in an instant. The whole room seemed to be enveloped by the light emitted from her body. Chu Ho's fair and flawless face was filled with shades of black, red, pink, and white. The black was naturally due to her thick black eyeliner and her curly eyelashes. The pink was due to her pink cheeks. The blush was just right. It was neither too bright nor too plain. Her high nose bridge and bright red lips made her look as graceful as jade. Her bearing was extraordinary. She had a noble and compelling aura that could not be looked directly at. Gu Jinglian's Adam's apple bobbed slightly as he stared fixedly at her. Even his heart stopped beating, afraid that he would disturb her beauty. Chu Ho saw that he was staring at her motionlessly and felt a little uneasy instead. "What's the matter? Do I look good?" She was not confident in her own taste and beauty. When she looked at herself in the mirror earlier, she felt that this outfit was quite beautiful. She did not know how Gu Jinglian would look at it. Hence, she asked this question to test his opinion. After her test, Gu Jinglian finally came back to his senses. He was a little startled as he grunted. However, in Chuyi's eyes, his hesitation due to his stunning beauty seemed to be hesitation and reluctance to force an answer. "If you don't think I look good, just say so." She was obviously not satisfied with his reaction. At least, She did not see amazement in his eyes. Gu Jinglian said awkwardly, "Didn't I say that I look good? Look at how reluctant you are to answer. No one forced you." Gu Jinglian frowned. Before he could say anything, Xiao Bao jumped up and down beside Chu Ho and said with a smile, "Mommy is the prettiest. If Daddy doesn't think she's pretty, then it's Daddy's fault. Anyway, Xiao Bao thinks she's pretty. Why don't Mommy marry Xiao Bao?" Gu Jinglian's face immediately turned green. What nonsense was this little fellow spouting? Although this child's words carried no harm, but at such a young age, he actually had ideas about his woman. Xiao Bao obviously did not notice Gu Jinglian's darkening expression behind him. Chu Ho could not help but laugh. "Even if she marries you, she'll have to wait until our Xiao Bao grows up." Xiao Bao tilted his head. "When will Xiao Bao grow up? When Xiao Bao grows up, I'll be old too. Mommy will never grow old. Even if Mommy grows old, Xiao Bao won't despise you." Gu Jinglian's eyebrows twitched. This son of his was really good at sweet-talking. Chu Ho said lightly, "Someone is not as good as his own son when it comes to sweet-talking." Gu Jinglian snorted disdainfully. The stylist beside him said uneasily, "President Gu, are you satisfied with this one? Do you want to try something else?" Without waiting for Gu Jinglian to speak, Chu Ho complained, "Isn't this headdress too heavy? It's making my neck sore." Chapter 3700. However, the headwear on Chu Ho's head was made of genuine gold. Hence, it had a certain weight to it. It was no wonder that his neck was sore from the weight. Gu Jinglian said, "I'll take this. It looks pretty good. You don't have to try anything else." Chu Ho was a little unhappy. "Can you change the headwear? This is too heavy. This dragon and phoenix gown should be paired with this kind of headwear. Only then will it have the most aura. Anything else will be a little cliché," the stylist added. Chu Ho sighed and gave in. "All right, I'll take this one." Chu Ho turned back to the dressing mirror and said to them, "Since we've decided on this gown, let's change out of it. It's uncomfortable to wear it. Of course, the nicer the gown, the better. It'll definitely be uncomfortable. However, this is a once-in-a-lifetime wedding. It'll be a precious memory if it's grand." Gu Jinglian was about to walk out of the room when Chu Ho said faintly, "Who said this is a once-in-a-lifetime wedding? Who knows? Maybe I'll have a second one." These words undoubtedly ignited a gunpowder keg. Gu Jinglian turned around abruptly and said coldly, "I dare you to say that again." Chu Ho said indignantly, "Fine, I'll say it again. Who said this is a once-in-a-lifetime wedding? Who knows? Maybe there'll be a second or third one." Gu Jinglian's expression became even uglier. This woman was clearly provoking him. When the stylist saw this, she immediately tried to smooth things over. "Yes, of course there'll be a second or third one." Before she could finish speaking, Gu Jinglian heard this and became even more displeased. The few of them who didn't know how to read a person's mood actually agreed. The stylist saw that Gu Jinglian's expression had suddenly turned ugly. She quickly explained, "In the future, when it's your 40th or 50th wedding anniversary, you can also hold a ceremony. For example, a silver wedding, a golden wedding, and even a diamond wedding." Gu Jinglian frowned. "There's such a thing?" Chu Ho snorted coldly. "There's a lot of things to say. It's said that there are proposals before marriage, but I've never seen anyone take the initiative to propose." "Ah, Master Gu didn't propose to you?" the stylist asked cautiously. Chu Ho nodded. "No." Gu Jinglian walked up to her and sized her up. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Do you want to propose to me?" Chu Ho crossed his arms in front of his chest, but did not express his opinion. Gu Jinglian was in the same position as her. He crossed his arms and looked at her. "How do you want me to propose?" "It's too late to propose now." As Chu Ho spoke, he turned to look at the dressing mirror and removed the gold ornaments on his head. The stylist immediately said, "It's not too late to propose now. As long as it's before the wedding, the proposal will count. Generally speaking, when proposing, the man should kneel down on one knee and prepare some romantic surprises." Gu Jinglian's expression was slightly gloomy. "Kneel? Gu Jinglian narrowed his eyes. "You need to kneel to propose?" "Proposing, as the name suggests, is to ask the woman to marry you," Chu Ho said again. "This is what you call proposal. Kneeling down on one knee is to show your sincerity. Gu Jinglian smiled. Dream on. Seeing this, Xiao Bao suddenly said, I've seen how they propose on TV. He found a jewelry box from somewhere and held it in his hands. He knelt down on one knee, sincerely, and said sincerely to Chu Ho, Beautiful lady, I swear to God that I will love and protect you for the rest of my life. May I ask if you'll marry me? Bang. Chapter 3701. Xiao Bao's head was about to explode. Gu Jinglian grabbed him by the ear and gritted his teeth. Do you want to die? Xiao Bao hugged his head and mumbled with reddened eyes. Daddy is bullying me. Yes, I'm beating you up. Gu Jinglian pulled him by the ear and dragged him out of the door. Let's go. Xiao Bao whimpered as he was dragged out by Gu Jinglian. They bickered as they walked out. Daddy, you're too violent. I wonder if you'll bully Mommy in the future if I hand her over to you. Shut up. As a man, you have to be gentle with women and children. Don't you understand this? Bam. It was another knock on the head. Ugh. Talk more nonsense and I'll twist your head off. Bam. The door slammed shut. Chu Ho stared blankly at the sound of the father and son leaving. After a while, he came back to his senses and burst out laughing. What a pair of clowns. Gu Jinglian carried Xiao Bao into the bedroom. At the same time, Uncle Fu had already pulled up the curtains. The bed was a large, antique bed with carved flowers. With the red curtains as embellishments, it looked as if they had returned to the ancient times. There were also a lot of balloons that floated to the ceiling. At a glance, the originally old-fashioned room looked a little more romantic. Gu Jinglian threw Xiao Bao onto the bed like a ball and handed him a bunch of balloons and an air pump. He instructed, fill the balloons with air. Xiao Bao asked righteously, how do I get paid? 1 yuan per balloon. That's too cheap. Xiao Bao threw the air pump away. I'm not doing it. Suddenly, there was the sound of footsteps outside the door. The door was pushed open and she walked in with her school bag. I'm back from school. Before he could finish his sentence, Gu Linxi's eyes widened in surprise when he saw the decorations in the room. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Uncle Fu walked over and took Linxi's bag. Linxi, you're home? Do you have homework today? I finished it in school. Linxi saw a balloon on the bed and walked over. He picked it up and looked at it. He then looked at the balloon on the ceiling and asked, do you need help? Uncle Fu nodded. Yes, we're lacking manpower right now. All right, I'll do it. Linxi obediently sat down on the edge of the bed, picked up the air pump, and studied it for a while. Soon he understood. After a while, he shot 3 or 4 balloons, tied them to a ribbon, and floated to the ceiling. Gu Jinglian snorted and scolded Xiao Bao. Look at how obedient your brother is. Xiao Bao pointed at him and complained, Daddy uses child labor. Bang! A knock was heard. Xiao Bao said tearfully, Daddy is abusing children. Bang! A knock was heard. Gu Jinglian said coldly, You dare to say that again? Xiao Bao looked at his tightly clenched fist and retreated in fear. Gu Jinglian had just put down his fist when Xiao Bao said indignantly, Daddy is a super bad guy. Gu Jinglian slowly turned around. Well, the room was shaking. Even though they were a room apart, Chu Ho could hear the commotion in the master bedroom. He only heard Xiao Bao's cries. Then there was dead silence. Gu Jinglian, this guy, he must be bullying our son again. Chapter 3702. Putting on makeup took a long time, but removing it was very fast. After the stylist removed Chu Ho's makeup, they did a series of skincare treatments for her. Your skin condition isn't very good, the stylist said as they applied a facial mask for her. Do you usually take care of your skin? I don't. Don't you use skincare products? I don't. Oh my God. The stylists looked at each other in dismay. If you don't take care of your skin at all, it's really unbelievable that your skin is in such a state. Chu Ho said, I usually only wash my face with water. I don't really use facial cleanser. Actually, your skin condition is very young. Compared to other girls your age, your skin condition is very good. It's just that you don't hydrate your skin, and it's a little dehydrated. After putting on makeup, it will be very dry. How about this? We'll give you a few facial masks. You can apply them every night. Chu Ho took the facial masks and looked at them. She didn't know what brand they were, but since they were recommended by professional stylists, they should be effective. Okay, thank you. Before she could finish speaking, the stylists gathered in front of her with dazzling smiles on their faces. They revealed extremely sincere expressions and said in an almost begging tone, "If Master Gu asks about today's service, please give us full marks. Otherwise, if Master Gu isn't satisfied, we're done for." So, they gave her the facial masks to bribe her. Worried that she wasn't satisfied with their service, Gu Jinglian asked about it and offended them. "Okay, I got it." The stylists immediately thanked her profusely and looked as if they couldn't wait to kneel down and kowtow to her. After they packed up their cosmetics and left, they looked like they were about to shed tears of gratitude. Chuho was a little confused. Was Gu Jinglian that scary? Looking at them, they looked like they were about to cry. Chuho put the skincare products they gave her into the drawer and walked to the master bedroom. When she opened the door, she saw Lin Shi and Xiao Bao playing around with balloons on the bed. Uncle Fu was putting up flowers for the window. She glanced around and saw Gu Jinglian sitting on the sofa, cutting paper. Looking at the room again, it was already more than half decorated. The red curtains were draped over the bed, and the bright and clean windows were pasted with the word "Shi" on the window. These window flowers were probably the work of Gu Jinglian. Chuho looked surprised. "You know how to cut paper?" When Gu Jinglian heard the voice, he raised his head and saw that it was Chuho. He subconsciously threw paper cut to the side and said softly, "I don't know how to." When Xiao Bao saw this, he immediately got up from the bed and shouted, "Daddy, cut it." He refuses to admit it because he feels ashamed. Gu Jinglian glared at him fiercely. Xiao Bao was so scared that he immediately shut up. Uncle Fu had just finished putting up a piece of window decoration. When he saw Chu Ho, he immediately smiled and said, "Actually, Master is the most enthusiastic about decorating the bridal chamber. He looks indifferent on the surface, but in fact, so many things about the wedding are planned by him." "Uncle Fu," Gu Jinglian stopped him. "Shut up. Don't talk too much." When Chu Ho heard this, his lips curled into a smile. He laughed and said, "You still feel embarrassed? However, I seem to have heard someone say that he doesn't care about the wedding and just leaves it to others. I didn't expect someone to be so attentive to the wedding. It looks like he's looking forward to the wedding." Gu Jinglian's handsome face immediately turned red. Chapter 3703. Chu Ho asked again, "Then who cut these window trimmings?" Gu Jinglian made a prompt decision. "Uncle Fu." Uncle Fu and Xiao Bao said in unison, "Old Master cut them. Dad cut them." Gu Jinglian was speechless. Chu Ho clutched her stomach and laughed. "Ha ha ha. Why didn't you come up with a confession before lying?" Gu Jinglian suddenly got up and left the room with a gloomy expression. After he left, Xiao Bao and Lin Shi looked at each other and burst out laughing. Uncle Fu was also speechless. Old Master is two-faced. He has a sharp tongue, but a soft heart. He obviously did it with his heart, but he still won't admit it. Lin Shi added, "There's a saying that goes, you'll suffer if you want to keep up appearances. I think Dad really wants to keep up appearances." Xiao Bao nodded heavily. That's right. Dad is so awkward." Chu Ho looked disgusted, but in fact, she felt warm inside. In fact, how could she not know that these window trimmings were cut by Gu Jinglian? She was asking the obvious. She knew that other than Gu Jinglian, no one else could cut such beautiful window trimmings. Chu Ho walked to the table and casually picked up the window trimmings that Gu Jinglian had cut. She looked at them carefully. The trimmings were neat and the texture was simple. She could tell that Gu Jinglian had carefully cut them out bit by bit with a knife. Chu Ho couldn't help but smile. Her fingertips gently caressed the half-trimmed window trimmings. At night, Gu Jinglian sat in the study. As usual, he took a shower and read a book before going to bed. Chu Ho walked to the study after her shower. She saw Gu Jinglian sitting at the study table. She smiled and walked over. Gu Jinglian heard the footsteps, but he did not look up. He continued to hold the book and read it carefully. However, on the surface, he could not read a single word. He did not turn a page for a long time. Chu Ho stood behind him. She followed his gaze and looked at his book. Even after she had finished reading, he still did not turn the page. "You're such a meticulous reader." Chui paused for a moment before continuing. Did you read it word by word? Gu Jinglian finally looked up and glanced at her, but his eyes were extremely deep. Chuho snatched the book from his hand and turned a page. She was about to walk to the sofa and sit down to read it seriously when Gu Jinglian suddenly reached out his arm and wrapped it around her waist, pulling her into his arms. Chuho was caught off guard and fell into his arms. She looked up and met Gu Jinglian's deep eyes. Gu Jinglian lowered his head and stared at her face. His gaze sized her up inch by inch. His slender fingers gently caressed her cheek. Her skin was exquisite and flawless. It felt unexpectedly good to the touch. Gu Jinglian suddenly lowered his head and kissed her gently on the lips. For some reason, he wanted to kiss her. However, unlike other men, he did not kiss her impatiently. At first, he only kissed her lips lightly. He kissed her bit by bit, but was not in a hurry to go deeper. Chuho instinctively pushed his shoulders away. His kiss was too sudden. She was not even mentally prepared for it. However, no matter how much strength she used, Gu Jinglian did not budge. No matter how hard she pushed, he did not move at all. He was like a boulder. "What are you doing?" Her face was slightly red and her eyes were angry. Chapter 3704. I'm kissing you. After Gu Jinglian finished speaking, his thin lips pressed down on hers again. This time, the kiss was much gentler. He gently covered her lips with his, sucking on her lips and rubbing them gently. It was so gentle that Chuho gradually got used to this kiss and did not resist anymore. She looked up and saw Gu Jinglian's deep eyes. On the window, there was the bright red word she. She seemed to be able to imagine what it would be like on the day of their wedding. However, she could not imagine what it would be like on the day of their wedding. What kind of clothes would he be wearing, walking in front of her and holding her hand? On that day, would he still be as serious as usual with a meticulous smile on his face? Or would he say one thing and hold her hand disapprovingly, as indifferent as he had always been? She could not imagine it. She had not even thought that she would have such a day, to be able to become husband and wife with such a man. When she first heard the name Gu Jinglian, besides feeling unfamiliar, there was also an inexplicable hostility. This name resounded like thunder in the ears of the Interpol. As a spy by his side, she had more contact with this man and gained a deeper understanding of him. He was ruthless, cruel, and unscrupulous. He could always casually force his opponents into a desperate situation and leave calmly. At that time, she would never have thought that she would become his wife a few years later. She still remembered that this man had made it clear that he would not marry and have children like other men. She did not expect that they would have such a cute and obedient son, Xiao Bao. She also did not expect that she would hold a wedding with him. Gu Jinglian, Chuho suddenly spoke. Yes, do you really want to marry me? Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. Why are you suddenly asking this question? Didn't you say before that you would never get married in this lifetime? Chuho continued. Don't tell me that our wedding is just a game to you, or is it just compensation for Xiao Bao? Gu Jinglian's eyes flickered. He looked away but did not answer immediately. Chuho held his face and forced him to turn his head to look at him. He asked again, marriage means that you will be together for the rest of your life. Are you willing to spend a lifetime with me? Gu Jinglian pursed his thin lips, unable to speak. Chuho was a little annoyed. Are you sincere in wanting to be with me? Of course. Then, Chuho finally asked the question in his heart. Do you like me? She didn't dare to talk about love. She also didn't dare to imagine that a proud and arrogant man like Gu Jinglian would tie his life to a woman. However, even if it was just a little bit, this love was much deeper and heavier than the love of other men. Gu Jinglian stared at her for a while and suddenly asked, Do you like me? He asked with an awkward expression. When Chuho heard this, he smiled and said, I like it. She decided not to hide it anymore. Perhaps the initial decision to settle down in the Gu family was purely to give Xiao Bao a home. Chapter 3705. However, after getting used to life in the Gu residence, Chuho realized that she had some special feelings for the Gu family. These feelings were too subtle. If one was not serious, it would not be easy to notice. The feeling of home, the warmth of home. This feeling was unprecedented. Even though she still did not accept Gu Jinglian wholeheartedly and only regarded him as Xiao Bao's father, a family member, but not a husband. However, during that trip to North Africa, she ignored all dangers and sneaked into North Africa to find Gu Jinglian. She shuttled between gunfire, at the border of life and death, hell on earth. Only then did she realize that she had to reevaluate her feelings for Gu Jinglian. Did she love him? Did she like him? If she did not love or like him, then why did she risk her life just to find him? Was it purely for Xiao Bao? Did she not want Xiao Bao to lose his biological father? Could she not bear to see Xiao Bao suffer the pain and injury of being separated from his flesh and blood? But more than once at night, she asked herself if she would still go to North Africa and look for Xiao Bao if it were not for him. The answer was yes. Even if she faced death, she would find him and bring him home. Although she had never liked a man and had never been in any relationship, she did not know what it felt like to like and love someone. Her understanding of love was that she could not leave and did not want to leave. She liked him. She must have liked him. Otherwise, why would she risk her life for such a man? Chuho recognized her feelings and her heart. Therefore, when Gu Jinglian asked her, she admitted that she liked him. She had always dared to love and hate. She did not adhere to the eternal rules of men who should take the initiative and women who should be reserved. She liked him. It was a fact that could not be changed. She just said that she loved him. There was nothing to hide. In this life, one should not make a choice that they would regret and say something that they would regret. If they said it and did it, then they would not regret it. I like you. Chuho smiled calmly. Gu Jinglian listened carefully. Chuho, like you. Even though he had hurt her, he had also given her joy. Love, no hate. When Gu Jinglian heard this answer, he was slightly startled, but he smiled. He understood her character. She was open and honest, and did not hide her feelings at all. She was straightforward and natural. This was also one of the reasons he liked her. What about you? You haven't answered me yet. Chuho raised his eyebrows. I don't want you to marry me. The ceremony is just for Xiao Bao's feelings. If you like me, you like me. If you don't like me, you don't like me. You're not even afraid of death. Don't you have the courage to answer this question? Gu Jinglian asked, is the answer really that important? Of course. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he laughed. He was the same as Chuho. When he was young, the cold environment he grew up in had created a cold personality. He was also very indifferent to relationships. He had developed a character that would not give up until he achieved his goal. He had had many women, but Chuho was the most special one. Chapter 3706. It was not that he did not have women who were prettier and prettier than her. There were all kinds of women around him, but Chuho was special. It was not just because of her identity as Xiao Bao's biological mother. She seemed to be the only woman who was willing to risk her life for him. Was he touched? He was afraid not. He was a proud man like Gu Jinglian. How could he be touched by such a ridiculous feeling and tie himself up for the rest of his life? For Xiao Bao, similarly, he would never bet his life on a man for the sake of a child. It was only now that he understood that there was no need for a reason to like someone. Cute? Gentle? Flirtatious? She did not have any of these qualities that a woman should have. However, it still proved that there was no need for a reason to like someone. He was willing to be with her for the rest of his life. She might have many flaws, but it did not stop him from liking her. Gu Jinglian lowered his head and gently kissed her lips. Their lips pressed together as he murmured, "If this feeling of wanting to be with you is like," then he did not continue speaking and deepen the kiss. The answer that followed was self-evident, though. A man like him did not like to show off. Usually, such a proud man would keep everything in his heart. Chuho could understand, though. In his kiss, she seemed to have heard his answer. Like, if you like, then be together for the rest of your life. A lifetime was short, but it was long. Only they knew in their hearts that this choice was not for Xiao Bao, but for themselves. This was also one of the reasons why Gu Jinglian did not hate Yin Tianyu for the incident in North Africa. Given his vengeful personality, that incident in North Africa would probably become an unforgettable barrier between the Gu and Mu families. However, even though he had lost Werther, he recognized his own heart. Chuho originally did not want to take wedding photos, but Xiao Bao insisted on it. Just as well, she could take a family photo as well. Sometimes, when the kindergarten held activities, the homeroom teacher would ask for a family photo. Xiao Bao couldn't take it out, so he could only say that he couldn't find the family photo. It just so happened that he had such an opportunity this time. Since Xiao Bao had already said so, Chuho had no reason to refuse. After the wedding photo shoot, Uncle Fu suddenly took out a photo of her and gave it to the Gu family tattoo artist. There were 5 tattoo artists in the Gu residence. The tattoos and totems on the bodies of the several thousand disciples of the Gu family were all handled by the tattoo artists employed by the Gu residence. The photo that Uncle Fu took away was a photo of Chu Ho wearing a traditional Chinese and phoenix robe and wearing a phoenix coronet. The tattoo artist took it and designed a heavy colored tattoo. Chu Ho did not know about this. However, a few days later, Chu Ho finally found something fishy about Gu Jinglian. He had an additional tattoo on his body. That night, when she entered the room, she happened to see Gu Jinglian changing into a bathrobe. She vaguely noticed a strange mark on his left chest. She took the chance when he was not paying attention and lifted his bathrobe, only to see her face. "What is this?" Gu Jinglian waved her hand away with an unnatural expression. "It's nothing. I saw it." Chu Ho frowned. "That's my face." Chapter 3707. She held up a fan and covered half of her face, revealing only her eyes. The tassels of the phoenix coronet dangled from her hair. After the tattoo artist designed, it was made into a multicolored tattoo on his chest. Similarly, it was the position of his heart. Chu Ho was stunned. He got a tattoo? How did he get a tattoo? And it was her portrait? Chu Ho was so curious that she wanted to tug at his bathrobe. "Let me see." Gu Jinglian slapped her hand away. "No, let me see. It's my portrait after all. Don't I have the right to see it?" Gu Jinglian said awkwardly, "No, you don't have a right." Chu He was displeased. In one go, she grabbed Gu Jinglian's collar and threw him onto the bed. She straddled him and pinned his hands down with the back of her hand. In an instant, she tore open the bathrobe. When she saw the totem tattooed on his chest, she was stunned. Chu Ho furrowed her eyebrows. "What does this mean?" "Nothing. You wouldn't get this tattoo for no reason, right?" Chu Ho smiled and asked, "Do you also think that this photo of mine looks especially good?" "Shut up. Or do you want to engrave my most beautiful image in your heart forever?" "Shut up. You've got a tattoo, but you don't let me talk about it. How awkward are you?" "Shut up. Gu Jinglian, I didn't expect you to love me so much." "Shut up." Outside the door, Uncle Fu happened to pass by and overheard their bickering. He couldn't help but laugh. Actually, the reason why he had asked the digitizer for this wedding photo that day was because of Gu Jinglian's instructions. That day, the wedding photo was printed on the spot. Gu Jinglian saw this photo and didn't say anything. He asked Uncle Fu to print out this photo and take it to the Gu family's tattoo artist for a design. Uncle Fu asked him what he wanted to do. Gu Jinglian only asked him to do as he was told, but did not say anything else. How could Uncle Fu not understand? He immediately understood. The old master wanted to tattoo his wife on his body. Gu Jinglian did not have many tattoos on his body, but this one covered his entire chest. There was no extra space. On the left side of his chest, in the center of his precordium. This was also the position of the heart, the most sacred position. He got a tattoo of her. What did this mean? Uncle Fu felt gratified when he saw this. This showed that old master really cared about Chu Ho. He was too happy. She was happier than anyone else. To be able to see his master's happiness while he was still alive, his greatest wish in this life, could be considered to have been fulfilled. However, how could someone as arrogant as Gu Jinglian tell Chu Ho his intentions? It would be hard for him to say such embarrassing words for the rest of his life. No matter how Chu Ho asked, he couldn't get an answer. By chance, Xiao Bao also discovered this tattoo. He recognized at a glance that it was a portrait of Chu Ho. He didn't say anything. He returned to his room and started to flip through his photo album. Finally, he found an especially cute photo. Xiao Bao held the photo up and ran to Gu Jinglian. He gestured with the photo on his right chest. Gu Jinglian lifted his collar and asked unhappily, "What are you doing?" "Dad, look. How about you tattoo me here?" Xiao Bao showed the photo to him as he poked his right chest. "Get lost." Gu Jinglian didn't even think and threw him aside. Xiao Bao felt indignant when he heard this. Chapter 3708. No reason. Xiao Bao said angrily, "You only tattooed Mommy, not me." "Why?" Gu Jinglian snorted coldly. "Nothing. You're ugly." Whoosh! It was a blow to the heart. Xiao Bao's glass heart was shattered into pieces. He held his heart and asked pitifully, "You said I'm ugly." Xiao Bao knelt on the floor, covering his mouth with his fist and acting like a resentful wife. "You said I'm ugly. Daddy is biased." Gu Jinglian was speechless. Was this guy an actor? Why was he so dramatic? He said coldly, "Gu Qingze, you'd better know when to stop." Xiao Bao burst into tears. "Daddy doesn't love me. Daddy doesn't love me. Daddy only tattooed Mommy, not me. Daddy is so biased, so biased." Gu Jinglian wanted to kick him out of the door. He said, "Why are you acting like a resentful wife?" His acting skills were top-notch. Everyone knew that he was pretending. He cried for a long time, but there were no tears. Xiao Bao asked anxiously, "Daddy, tell me the truth. Do you really think that your son is ugly?" Gu Jinglian hummed in acknowledgement. Baby Chu covered his face and ran away with a wah sound. He ran all the way to Chu Ho's room and complained to her pitifully. Chu Ho was confused when she heard that, but when she saw Xiao Bao's funny look, she couldn't help but laugh. "Daddy is jealous that you're cute." "Oomph, that must be it." Xiao Bao crossed his arms and nodded solemnly. "Daddy must be jealous that I'm cute. That's why he said that. He's purposely making me angry." However, he said longingly, "But Xiao Bao also wants Daddy to tattoo me. What's so good about it?" It just feels Xiao Bao thought about it seriously. It just feels special. Chu Ho teased him. "Then Mommy will tattoo you on my heart, okay?" "All right." Chu Ho wasn't just teasing him. So he took the photo in Xiao Bao's hand and found a tattoo artist. He asked him to design a design. Uncle Fu found out about it and told Gu Jinglian about it. Gu Jinglian was furious. No tattoos allowed. That night, when Shu had just entered the room, Gu Jinglian saw her sitting at the desk and said this out of the blue. "Huh?" For a moment, Chuho did not understand what he was trying to say. He was confused. "What do you mean by not allowed? What's not allowed?" "I heard that you want to tattoo Xiao Bao's picture on your body." Chuho was suddenly enlightened. "Oh, you're talking about that?" She nodded. "I do have that thought. You are not allowed to." "Why?" This man was too domineering. Only the officials were allowed to set fires, but not the common people. "You already have a tattoo, so why can't I have one?" Gu Jinglian frowned, but did not say anything. But in reality, he didn't want Chu Ho to have anything that was not harmonious. What if he saw Xiao Bao's picture tattooed on her body when they were in bed? That would be a very scary feeling. He kept feeling as if a pair of eyes were staring at him. He was not interested anymore. Moreover, her skin was so fair and smooth. If he had a tattoo on her body, it would ruin her beauty. "If I say no, then no. You're not allowed to get a tattoo." Chu Ho said, "I promised Xiao Bao and the child, so I have to keep my word. Besides, you already have a tattoo, so it's not a big deal for me to get one. You can get one." Chapter 3709. Make the tattoo smaller. Tattoo it on your butt. Xiao Bao would be so angry that he would cry, wouldn't he? How could he do such a thing to his son? Chu Ho could totally imagine how pitiful Xiao Bao would be when he found out that his portrait was tattooed on his butt. "Mom, I'm on your butt, and you're sitting on me every day." Sob, sob, sob. Xiao Bao feels so wrong, no way. Chu Ho immediately interrupted him. Gu Jinglian replied, "Why not? You tattoo me on your chest, and I tattoo Xiao Bao on my butt. Isn't the difference in treatment too big?" Gu Jinglian sat down at the table and snorted coldly. "Why should I tattoo him on your body? I won't allow it." "You're so overbearing. You only know that I'm overbearing on the first day you met me." In Gu Jinglian's mind, he got the tattoo only because he liked that photo. Given his style of doing things, to him, having a portrait tattooed on his chest had a special meaning. Of course, he wouldn't agree to Xiao Bao's whim. Chu Ho was helpless. If Gu Jinglian didn't agree and he didn't say anything, the Gu family's tattoo artist wouldn't tattoo him. Thinking of this, he could only give up. When Chu Ho went back, Xiao Bao looked at her expectantly. However, she said helplessly, "Your dad didn't allow it." "Why?" "Your dad said that it's okay to tattoo it, but it has to be on your butt." Xiao Bao was speechless. He frowned and asked suspiciously, "What?" "He said that if you want to tattoo it, it can only be on your butt." Xiao Bao clutched his chest. "What? How can he be so heartless?" "Good boy." Chu Ho smiled and squatted down. She patted his head and said patiently, "Actually, a tattoo is very painful. You don't want your mom to be in pain because of a tattoo, right?" Xiao Bao listened and nodded, but he felt a little awkward in his heart. Actually, it wasn't a big deal if Chu Ho didn't get a tattoo. The problem was that Gu Jinglian actually said that he wanted to tattoo him on his butt. Bullshit. Boom. Charge. How infuriating. But in front of Chu Ho, she still had to maintain a smile. Xiao Bao clenched his fists, feeling indignant. He suddenly thought of something, and his eyes flashed as he chuckled. In the past few days, Xiao Bao had been well-behaved. On this day of rest, Xiao Bao suddenly ran to Gu Jinglian's study in the evening. Gu Jinglian had just returned from the company. He dialed the number and explained some of the wedding procedures. After hanging up the phone, he looked up and saw Xiao Bao standing at the door of the room, wearing a bathrobe. However, the way he looked at him was a little malicious. "Daddy." Gu Jinglian's eyebrows twitched. He did not know what this little guy was up to. "What are you doing?" "I got a tattoo." Xiao Bao flipped his hair proudly and swayed his hips as he walked in front of him. He placed his little hands on the table, looking very pleased with himself. Gu Jinglian said, "Oh," but did not seem to be moved. "What does it have to do with me?" "Of course it has to do with you." Xiao Bao held his chest and pretended to put on a flattering expression. "In order to express my deep love for Daddy, I drew Daddy's picture and tattooed it on my butt." Deep love? His picture? Tattooed on his butt? Gu Jinglian was speechless. "What? How is it?" Chapter 37:10. Xiao Bao's eyebrows twitched. "Look at how good I am to Dad." As he said this, he took half a step back and pulled his bathrobe open. He turned around and stuck out his back, revealing his round and bouncy little butt. Gu Jinglian followed his gaze and saw that there was really a tattoo of his portrait on his butt. "You, Dad, if I make Dad angry in the future, you don't have to do it yourself. I'll just slap my own butt." As Baby Chu spoke, he slapped himself hard on the buttocks. As he slapped himself hard, his buttocks shook. On top of him, Gu Jinglian's face instantly turned red. At first glance, this slap seemed to have landed on his face. Gu Jinglian's face darkened at once. "You'd better behave yourself." "Dad, you're angry." Xiao Bao smirked. "Then I'll slap my own butt 10 times. As he spoke, he began to spank himself hard on the buttocks with a few pa-pa-pa sounds. However, this scene was too glaring to look at. It was as if all these slaps had landed on his face. Gu Jinglian suddenly got up and walked towards Xiao Bao aggressively. "Gu Qingze." Xiao Bao turned around and saw his expression. He immediately realized that Gu Jinglian was really angry. He didn't even have time to put on his bathrobe and ran out of the door in a panic. "Wow, murder." Gu Jinglian also quickly chased after him. In a long corridor, a few servants passed by and saw the naked little munchkin running down the long corridor like a madman. Running naked. Behind him, Gu Jinglian chased after him with big strides. Like a gust of wind, he lifted Xiao Bao up in an instant. "Wow, shut up, don't hit me." Bam bam. 2 unambiguous slaps. "You like to hit your own, but so much?" Gu Jinglian asked as he ravaged his hair. "Then do you mind if I do it for you?" Gu Jinglian didn't wait for Xiao Bao to finish his sentence before he started spanking him. Xiao Bao cried out in pain, his eyes brimming with tears. When Shuhi returned to the room, she saw Gu Jinglian sitting elegantly on the sofa with his legs crossed and a cold expression on his face. Baby Chu, on the other hand, was kneeling on the sofa. More than half of his buttocks were swollen, and more than half of the painting on his buttocks had been knocked off. When Xiao Bao took the photo and was about to get a tattoo, the tattoo artist who was holding the photo didn't dare to really inscribe it. After all, she was still a child, and her words carried no harm. If old Master knew about this, he would definitely be in big trouble, right? Therefore, even though it was said to be tattooed, it was actually just a drawing that was imprinted on it. How would they dare to really tattoo it? Gu Jinglian could tell at a glance that this was only the first step of the tattoo process. After printing it and imprinting it on her, but the next step was to move the needle. Once it was done, it was done. Xiao Bao rubbed his eyes and sobbed. Gu Jinglian put on a shirt for him. He wore a pair of underwear, but his butt was still exposed. When he saw Chu Ho, he cried even harder. He reached out his little arms and asked for a hug. Chu Ho had just walked over when Gu Jinglian snorted coldly. No hugging. What's wrong? Chu Ho ignored him and walked over to Xiao Bao's side and picked him up. Xiao Bao, don't cry. Mom, my butt is swollen. Chapter 37:11. The wedding date was getting closer and closer. The entire Gu family was in a state of anxiety. No one dared to be negligent. If there were any accidents at the wedding, none of them would be able to escape punishment if Gu Jinglian decided to punish them. There were only 10 days left until the wedding. However, an accident caught everyone off guard. Chu Ho had a suspected pregnancy reaction. No one had expected this to happen. She suspected that her pregnancy was not a problem of delayed menstruation. Although Chu Ho was not busy preparing for the wedding during this period, as a bride-to-be, she had a lot of things to prepare. She had forgotten that her menstruation period had not arrived yet. Until one day, when she woke up, she felt particularly uncomfortable. She had been extremely tired for the past few days. No matter how much she slept, she could not wake up. At dinner, at first, he just didn't have an appetite. Later on, the situation became worse. Greasy food, especially pork belly, braised pork, and chicken drumsticks, was only inedible at first. Once she ate it, she would feel very uncomfortable. However, gradually, the symptoms became more and more serious. She could not see it, she could not hear it, and she would vomit when she heard it. She did not realize that she was pregnant. Later, when she passed by the kitchen and heard the sound of cooking, she threw herself at the flower bed and retched for a while. When Annie Chin, who was passing by, saw this, she immediately walked over and asked suspiciously, "Don't tell me you're pregnant." "Pregnant? Io, it means pregnant." As Annie Chin spoke, her face flushed red. She asked vaguely, "Recently, have you and Master Gu?" Cough, cough, cough. "Do you have that?" She did not say it explicitly, but it was self-evident. Chu Ho narrowed her eyes suspiciously. It was not that they had not. After returning from North Africa, they had had sex a few times. However, they had taken contraceptive measures. Not a single time had been missed. In fact, Chu Ho did not want to have children. She was not sure about Gu Jinglian's attitude. However, when it came to children, Gu Jinglian would not force it. He would let nature take its course. She had only done it twice in North Africa, and she had also taken the medicine. How could she have gotten pregnant? But now, all the symptoms seemed to be similar to pregnancy. So, Chu Ho went to the pharmacy to buy a pregnancy test kit. He planned to test it first. Early in the morning, after Gu Jinglian left the room, Chu Ho sneakily took the pregnancy test kit into the bathroom and did as Mama Chin instructed. When he came out of the bathroom, Chu Ho's brows were tightly knitted. This matter was a little too mysterious. How could this be? What if she got pregnant? When Chu Ho came down from his room, Mother Chin saw him and immediately went up to him. She asked curiously, "How was it? Do you have any?" Chu Ho looked at her with a complicated gaze and nodded gently. "I'm great." Seeing this, Mother Chin's face glowed. "Does Master Gu know about this too?" "He doesn't know yet." "Then, I'll hurry and tell him." "Don't. He left early in the morning. There's no hurry to tell him." Chapter 37:12. Now that Xiao Bao has a little brother and a little sister, if we tell Master Gu and Xiao Bao about this, they will definitely be overjoyed. But, Chu Ho said with some hesitation, "I don't intend to have another child." "Why?" "I think that having Xiao Bao and Lin Shi is enough. If we have another child, Xiao Bao may not be happy." She already felt that 2 sons were enough. If she had another child, it would be fine if it was a daughter, but if it was a son, the 3 of them would definitely cause a ruckus. Ever since Lin she had returned to the Gu family, it had been more than a month. It had not been easy for him to get used to everything in the Gu family, but in the end, everything had changed. Xiao Bao and Lin she were both boys. Lin she used to be quite quiet, but after meeting a clown like Xiao Bao, his personality had changed and he had become a little mischievous. No, not a little mischievous, but very mischievous. If they had another son, the three boys would definitely overturn the Gu family. Mother Qin laughed when she heard this. How is that possible? No matter how mischievous the three children are, how could they possibly overturn such a big house? It's hard to say. Master Gu was very mischievous when he was young, but I didn't see him overturn the Gu family's house. You don't have to worry about this matter. First of all, it depends on whether you want to keep this child or not. Chuho smiled and said, Of course I can't bear to get rid of my own child. Of course I want to keep it. Although she did not want to keep it, since she had it, it was fate. Then isn't it settled? Since you have decided to keep it, then be happy. When Chuho heard this, the knot in his heart also disappeared. Mother Qin told Uncle Fu about this matter. When Uncle Fu first heard this, he was still a little doubtful, until Mother Qin said that they had already tested it with a pregnancy test kit. In order to confirm it, Master Gu would bring Chu Ho to the hospital for an ultrasound. Then, they would be able to confirm it. When Uncle Fu heard this, he was so excited that he called Gu Jinglian to report this matter, despite Mother Qin's attempts to stop him. On the other end, Gu Jinglian was still in a meeting. As soon as he heard about this, he lost interest in the meeting and hurried back. Chu Ho was still in the room. She did not know why, but she was always tired and weak. When Gu Jinglian pushed the door open, she was taking an afternoon nap. When she heard the sound of the door opening, she immediately sat up in bed. When she saw that it was him, she subconsciously looked at the sky outside the window. It was still afternoon. Why are you back so early? Gu Jinglian walked to the bed with a serious expression and asked in a low voice, Are you really pregnant? So it was because of this matter. Apparently, Uncle Fu and Aunt Qin couldn't wait to tell him about this. Chuho said, I'm not sure yet. I just tested it with a pregnancy test kit. Gu Jinglian immediately said, Get up and get dressed. Go to the hospital now and do a checkup. Do we go now? Chuho's lips twitched. Is there a need to be in such a hurry? On the other hand, Gu Jinglian couldn't wait any longer. However, with his personality, he was naturally embarrassed to say it out loud. Hence, he deliberately acted as if he wasn't looking forward to it. The pregnancy test kit is not accurate. We have to go to the hospital for a checkup to get a definite result. Chuho also agreed. She rolled out of bed and prepared to get dressed. When she got out of bed, Gu Jinglian actually went up to her personally and supported her. Chuho was even more speechless. Chapter 37:13. I'm just pregnant. I'm not a paraplegic. I know. Gu Jinglian, yes? Let me ask you a very serious question. Speak. Do you like boys or girls? Gu Jinglian hesitated for a moment. Based on his personality, he actually preferred girls. Actually, even if he didn't say it, Chu Ho could tell. Looking at how he usually despised Xiao Bao, when little Ro came to the house and he saw little Ro, he revealed a rare smile. It was obvious that he actually liked daughters very much. Chu Ho could even imagine that if she gave birth to a daughter, when she was 5 years old, Gu Jinglian would definitely give his daughter's photo to a tattoo artist and tattoo her on his right chest. Xiao Bao would probably feel all kinds of psychological imbalance when he saw that. Gu Jinglian said, It's the same whether it's a boy or a girl. I don't care. Really? What if I give birth to a son like Xiao Bao? Will you like him too? Gu Jinglian's eyes turned pale, but he said, It's fine. It's fine. If Xiao Bao was present and heard these words, he would definitely be so sad that he would cry and snot. Gu Jinglian put his coat on her. For some reason, after finding out that she was pregnant, Gu Jinglian was especially gentle to her, so much so that Chu Ho couldn't get used to it. You don't have to be so careful. It's just pregnancy. When I was pregnant with Xiao Bao, I was still building a house. No wonder Xiao Bao is so stupid. You'd better not let Xiao Bao hear this. When Gu Jinglian brought Chu Ho to the hospital, they went straight to the VIP passage and did a series of tests. After urine test, The nurse asked them to do an ultrasound. After the ultrasound, they were surprised to find that Chu-ho was not only pregnant, but she had been pregnant for more than 3 months. Gu Jinglian and Chu-ho were very surprised when they heard the results. After all, she had been pregnant for more than 3 months, but her belly did not show at all. Her lower abdomen was still as flat as before, and there was no sign of pregnancy at all. If she hadn't had some pregnancy symptoms recently, she wouldn't have thought that she was pregnant. The doctor was still a little speechless. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "You're more than 3 months pregnant. Are there any abnormalities during your menstrual period recently?" "I've been quite busy recently, so I didn't pay much attention to it. Moreover, I've taken better contraceptive measures, so I didn't think about it." "Do you always take contraceptive measures?" "Yes." The doctor glanced meaningfully at Gu Jinglian, who was standing by the bed, and said meaningfully, "If the man is stronger in that aspect, no matter how many contraceptives are used, there is still a possibility of pregnancy. I know a pregnant woman. Not only did she take medicine, but she also wore a condom. In the end, she fell for it. Fortunately, the fetus was very healthy." As he spoke, the doctor looked at the screen and exclaimed, "What happened? Wait a moment. Let me take a closer look." The doctor took a tool and rolled it around her belly. He said in surprise, "Ah, it seems like there's more than one." "More than one?" Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. "What do you mean?" The doctor looked at the screen seriously and then smiled as he congratulated. "Congratulations, it's a pair of twins. How rare, how rare. The first pair of twins this year." Twins. Gu Jinglian and Chu-ho looked at each other and also found it strange. "A boy and a girl?" "Yes." Chapter 37:14. Fraternal twins. A boy and a girl. Chu-hee, on the other hand, found it strange. "How can you tell?" "Fraternal twins are twins. We can tell from the ultrasound. However, the probability of this is very small. There are only 1 of 5 in 100 people. It's a very small probability." Gu Jinglian was stunned. The doctor saw his reaction and thought that something was wrong. He was a little nervous. "What's wrong? Are you unhappy that your wife is pregnant with twins?" Gu Jinglian came back to his senses and glanced at the doctor. Then, he glanced at Chu-ho beside him. There was a strange light in his eyes. His gaze fell on Chu-ho's belly, which was still as flat as before. His eyes flickered. It was a surprise. It was too sudden. The sudden appearance of a pair of twins left him a little dumbfounded. How could he not be happy? However, given Gu Jinglian's character, who had never been good at expressing his emotions, it was very difficult for him to express his happiness. However, even though he appeared to be calmer, Chu-ho still noticed that his fingertips were trembling slightly. He was excited. Although he still maintained his usual calm expression, his trembling fingertips revealed that he was a little excited. When they left the consultation room, Chu-ho was carrying a bag in his hand. Gu Jinglian was holding the ultrasound scan for a long time. There were only 2 black dots on the scan. Gu Jinglian felt that these 2 black dots looked like Chu-ho had swallowed 2 potatoes. He could not tell what they were. On the report, there were black words on a white background. They were categorized as twins A and B. There was no doubt that they were fraternal twins. This proved that there were 2 little lives in her belly. Perhaps one was a son and the other was a daughter. Gu Jinglian's cold lips gradually curved into a faint smile. Chu-ho observed the change in his expression and did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Gu Jinglian, what's with your half-smiling, half-crying expression?" Gu Jinglian heard this and immediately controlled his expression. He pretended to be calm and said, "I'm not smiling. The corners of your mouth are curled up. Is this not considered a smile?" "Gu Jinglian, if you're happy, just smile. You didn't see the expression on your face. It's uglier than crying." Gu Jinglian narrowed his eyes unhappily. "Stop talking." She was disturbing his good mood. "Do you want this child?" Chu-ho suddenly asked. Gu Jinglian suddenly stopped and looked at her with a dangerous gaze. She asked this question. Did she not want to keep it? "You don't want it?" "No, but I have to abide by your opinion." Chu-ho continued, "We have Xiao Bao, Lin Shi, and now there are 2 more in your belly. There are 4 children in the family. I don't know if you're mentally prepared." Are you afraid that the 4 children will turn the world upside down? I'm really worried about that. In Chuho's heart, Gu Jinglian was undoubtedly the big devil. If the pure blood of this big devil gave birth to a little devil and a little witch, then the Gu family would not have a peaceful day in the future. Since you're pregnant, then give birth to them properly. It was not as if he could not afford to raise them. Even if they lived in a group like pigs, the Gu family would not be turned upside down. What if Xiao Bao can't accept it? Chuho had seen many families with 2 children. De Bao and Air Bao fought for favor and bullied Air Bao. Chapter 37:15. Although she felt that Xiao Bao would not bully his younger siblings or resent them, she still had such concerns. If she was worried about her younger siblings, her energy would be distracted and Xiao Bao would feel aggrieved. Why are you worried about this? Gu Jinglian did not think much of it. If he doesn't accept it, just beat him up. What a violent solution. Gu Jinglian said, "Get in the car. We'll talk when we get home." Just as he turned around, he could no longer suppress the joy in his heart, and his lips curved into a gentle arc. He did not know when it started. Compared to the past, he was extremely disgusted when he saw children. Now, he actually had a lot of expectations for the 2 children who were about to arrive. Once, when he was waiting for a red light in the car, he saw a man passing by with a cute little girl sitting on his shoulder. The father was holding his daughter's hands and laughing along the way. He actually felt a little envious. That scene was too heartwarming. It actually made him yearn for it. It was said that daughters looked more like their fathers, while sons looked more like their mothers. Then, would his daughter look more like him? Gu Jinglian's thoughts seemed to drift far away. It drifted to 7 months later, on the day of Chu He's delivery. He imagined the nurse carefully handing a pink baby girl into his arms. His mood at that time should be as splendid as fireworks, right? Look, even before the children were born, Gu Jinglian's balance was already unreservedly leaning towards his daughter's side. In the future, when Chu Ho's twins were born, the other one would probably cry miserably. She had met a father who liked her daughter and had nowhere to vent her grievances. The share of doting had already been decided before the children were born. Chu did not know what Gu Jinglian was thinking. When the 2 of them returned to the Gu residence, Xiao Bao happened to come home from school. Gu Jinglian knew about it and ordered Uncle Fu to summon Xiao Bao into the study. Chuho originally wanted to follow in, but was stopped by Uncle Fu at the door, saying that Gu Jinglian had something to talk to Xiao Bao. In the study, Gu Jinglian hugged Xiao Bao in his arms and asked him a question seriously. "Xiao Bao, do you want a younger brother?" Xiao Bao looked confused. "No. What about your younger sister?" "No." Xiao Bao said honestly, "I already have an older brother." Gu gently and kindly stared at him. "Now, your mother is pregnant with 2 Xiao Bao babies. Whether you like it or not, you must not bully your younger sister in the future, okay?" Xiao Bao's eyelids twitched. "Daddy, why didn't you tell me not to bully my younger brother?" "You can bully my younger brother." Biological father. He was really his biological father. Xiao Bao clenched his fists and suddenly understood. "Oh, I know. Dad, you value girls more than boys. No wonder I have no place in your eyes. You don't like boys at all." Gu Jinglian played it down. "You found out. The main thing was that this guy was really asking for a beating sometimes." Xiao Bao was about to say something when he suddenly reacted and sucked in a breath of cold air. "Mommy is pregnant?" Gu Jinglian nodded. "She's pregnant with 2 babies?" Gu Jinglian nodded again. Xiao Bao suddenly clenched his fists excitedly. "I'm going to be an older brother." Gu Jinglian reached out and pinched his nose gently, which was rare for him. "Uh-huh. Wow, that's great." Chapter 37:16. Chuho could clearly hear Xiao Bao's cheers from outside the study. "Yeah, I'm going to be an older brother." She widened her eyes in surprise as she looked at the door. She was a little surprised and also a little shocked by Xiao Bao's attitude. She had been so worried earlier because she was worried that Xiao Bao wouldn't be able to accept having a younger brother and sister. She didn't expect that Xiao Bao's anticipation for the 2 babies was no less than hers, and no less than Gu Jinglian's. She relaxed her eyebrows and smiled. Her heart felt warm. It was her fortune to have such an older son like Xiao Bao. Knowing Xiao Bao's attitude, Chu-ho felt as if a rock had been lifted off her chest. The father and son's conversation ended. When the door opened, Chu-ho had already left quietly. Xiao Bao ran happily to Lin Shi's room. He found out from Uncle Fu that Lin Shi hadn't finished school yet. Lin Shi went to primary school, while Xiao Bao was still in kindergarten. Hence, Lin Shi finished school a little later. The days of waiting were a little torturous. Xiao Bao couldn't wait to share this great news with Lin Shi. After waiting for a while, Lin Shi finally finished school. From afar, they could hear Lin Shi stepping into the backyard and greeting Aunt Qin and Uncle Fu with a smile. Xiao Bao ran down the stairs excitedly and threw himself at Lin Shi while cheering. Lin Shi caught Xiao Bao in shock. Xiao Bao threw himself into his arms and hugged his neck as he jumped up and down. Lin Shi, we're going to be older brothers. We're going to be older brothers. Before Lin Shi could understand what was going on, he heard Xiao Bao introduce seriously, in the future, you'll be the eldest brother and I'll be the second brother, hee. When Uncle Fu and Aunt Qin heard this, they looked at each other and smiled. Lin Shi was a little surprised. Xiao Bao, what do you mean by that? I don't understand. Let me tell you a secret. Xiao Bao tugged at Lin Shi's sleeve and whispered to him, Mommy is pregnant. Father said that mother is pregnant with 2 children, a younger brother and a younger sister. Lin Shi stared blankly with his eyes wide open, unable to come back to his senses. This news, it was too unexpected. What a pleasant surprise. It was not until a long time later that Lin Shi reacted. She grabbed Xiao Bao's hand and asked in disbelief, Really? Really, really? Xiao Bao nodded solemnly. Daddy told me that himself. Oh my God. Lin Shi said, Then they must be twins. Twins? Yes, a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. This is very rare. There's a very small chance that they'll get pregnant at the same time. When Xiao Bao heard this, he was even more surprised. Really? I thought it was normal to have 2 babies. No way. Lin Shi was also excited. She pulled Xiao Bao and skipped in circles. Xiao Bao, we have a younger brother and sister. Yeah. Xiao Bao asked curiously, Do you like a younger brother or a younger sister? Me? I like both. If we're talking about who I like more, I like a younger sister more. He did not have a younger sister. Growing up in North Africa, those who were younger than him were all younger than him. I like a younger brother. Why? Xiao Bao said matter-of-factly, because Dad seems to like a younger sister more. No one likes a younger brother, so I like him. Also, if there's a younger brother, I can teach him how to play football. When Lin Shi heard this, they looked at each other and smiled. Chapter 37:17. The wedding was imminent. However, Fu Bo had already arranged everything, no matter how big or small. In addition, Chu-ho was pregnant. For the Gu family, it could be said that it was a double blessing. It had been a long time since the Gu family had such a grand occasion. Everyone in the Gu family was in a state of excitement. However, since Chu-ho was pregnant, she could not drink at the wedding. Therefore, Gu Jinglian had already informed them in advance. It was more of a threat than a greeting. Whoever dared to force Chu-ho to drink would have their hands chopped off. When Uncle Fu heard this, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Old Master's ability to protect his wife was improving day by day. However, this was also a good thing. At least, with Old Master's arrogant personality, he knew how to dote on his wife. It was really not easy. 2 days before the wedding, Uncle Fu took Chu-ho back to Uncle Fu's house. Aunt Fu had already decorated the boudoir a few days in advance. Chu-ho moved into the boudoir. Looking at Aunt Fu's thoughtful decorations, she sighed in her heart. She was so thoughtful. She was really thoughtful. Uncle Fu really treated her like his own daughter. Everything was ready. However, there was some disagreement about the bridesmaids. Chu-ho did not have many good friends, so there was a problem with the choice of bridesmaids. It was not good to have no bridesmaids. On the wedding day, there were many things to do. If there were no bridesmaids, there would be fewer people to help. Fortunately, Uncle Fu had a niece and a nephew, so he used them to make up the numbers temporarily. However, looking at the 2 bridesmaids, it seemed that there were not enough bridesmaids. During the wedding, Gu Jinglian's brothers were quite eye-catching. If they could not hold the door, it would be too boring. They did not know where Uncle Fu had gathered a group of sisters. It was said that many of them were from the side branches of the Gu family. Gu Jinglian did not have many cousins, but it was not a small number either. It was still possible to gather 7 or 8 of them. The group of sisters had come over the night before, but they were a little uneasy in front of Chu Ho. This awkwardness was built on the fact that he was Gu Jinglian's wife. They were very afraid of Gu Jinglian. In the Gu family, Gu Jinglian was the most authoritative person. He could do whatever he wanted. Just by standing in front of him, there was an indescribable pressure. However, Chu Ho was very easy to get along with. After a while, they became familiar with each other. They saw that Chu Ho didn't put on any airs and didn't feel any pressure. At night, one of Gu Jinglian's cousins even worked hard to do a full set of skincare for Chu Ho, saying that his makeup would be better the next day. Fortunately, Uncle Fu's house was big enough. There were 3 or 4 rooms in total. There was also a very long sofa in the living room. As a woman from the Gu family, she did not care about trifles. She could make do with a night on the sofa. There were a total of 7 or 8 people. The 3 of them squeezed into one room and slept just like that. However, Chu Ho lay on the bed and couldn't fall asleep. She fell asleep at 10 o'clock in the morning. When she woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning, she couldn't fall asleep. She didn't want to sleep anymore. She decided not to sleep. She turned on the TV and turned it off, intending to watch TV until dawn. The 2 bridesmaids who slept with her saw that she had woken up and were too nervous to fall asleep. The 3 of them got up and chatted while putting on facial masks and watching TV. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the makeup artist and the styling team arrived. Chu Ho's makeup was a little complicated. With her hair tied up, it took 3 hours of work. Chapter 37:18. Everyone in the room woke up and started to get busy. Say, today is our cousin's big day. If we don't take advantage of this opportunity to play some pranks, we might not have the chance in the future. It was not known who brought this up, but the group of people all agreed. What ideas should we come up with? Mimi, one of the women, raised her hand. I prepared a detailed strategy in advance. When the groom comes to pick the bride up, we'll play some games for him to play. If he can't win, he can't come in. Hence, the group of people started to get busy. First, he cut the red ribbon into sections and stuck both ends with glue, blocking the door. It was as if he simulated the infrared aurora scanning of the Matrix. Only by using these infrared rays and not touching any of them could they enter the house. There were also people who prepared toast and mustard. They smeared a thick layer of mustard on each piece of toast. If they lost the game, the bride and groomsmen would have to eat the toast covered in mustard without missing a single bit. That's too much. Chu Ho felt a little suffocated when he saw that they had smeared a thick layer of mustard. Besides the mustard toast, there were also fresh lemon slices and dried chili. Oh my God. Would this kill anyone? After preparing the game, someone suddenly suggested, how about we play a thrilling game? We'll give Uncle Jinglian a special surprise. The group of people gathered together and started to whisper. Then, everyone suddenly looked at Chu Ho with evil smiles. When the latter saw their evil smiles, he couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. On the other hand, Gu Jinglian woke up at 5:30 in the morning. He washed up, dressed up, tidied his hair a little, and put on his suit. The process of preparation for a man was much simpler than that of a woman. It had to be said that with Gu Jinglian's height and temperament, he looked extremely handsome in a suit. His domineering aura made people not dare to look at him directly. At 7:28 in the morning, Gu Jinglian set off to pick up the bride. The mighty convoy set off for Uncle Fu's house. When they arrived downstairs at 8:08, Gu Jinglian and his brothers went upstairs. Hearing the sound of firecrackers downstairs, the sisters in the house became nervous. They're here! They're here! Close the door. The group of people hurriedly locked the door and blocked the entrance. Just as the door closed, the elevator opened. Gu Jinglian walked to the door and saw that the door was closed. The best man beside him held a bouquet of flowers and knocked on the door. We're here. Open the door. How can I open the door without a red packet? That's right. We have more than 10 sisters working so hard. We won't open the door for you if you don't give us a red packet. Gu Jinglian snorted disdainfully. To him, anything that could be solved with a red packet was nothing. The groomsmen had prepared a big bag of red packets. They casually took out a dozen of them and stuffed them into the gap under the door. So the red packets were especially bulging. There was a thick stack of cash inside, and the gap in the door could not be squeezed in. Gu Jinglian said angrily, "Didn't I tell you to stuff less? Isn't this because it's easier to get things done with red packets?" Change to a smaller number. "Yes, Master Gu." The best man stuffed more than 20 red packets into the room and said pitifully, "Can you open the door now? Don't let our master Gu wait too long. There are too few red packets. It's not enough." Chapter 37:19. The door opened a crack. When the groomsmen saw that, what were they waiting for? They immediately barged through the door. Gu Jinglian walked in and was surprised to find many red ribbons at the entrance. They looked like lasers. It seemed that they had planned to prank him from the moment they entered the door. "You guys are really good at pranking. How can you say that we are pranking him? This is a test." "That's right. The bride is the most important today. How can we let you take her away so easily? The best part is yet to come. Groom, you have to go through with the groomsmen first. Be careful not to touch the red ribbons. Otherwise, if one of you touches it, everyone will be punished." Gu Jinglian looked back at the groomsmen and groomsmen. Fortunately, none of them were particularly fat, so he still had some confidence. For his skills, this trick was not enough. Gu Jinglian took the lead and went through the dangerous area. However, he was the second to be hit and broke 2 of the ribbons. Stupid teammate. The bridesmaids came over with a tray. There was a pile of toast stuffed with mustard. Gu Jinglian did not know what was on it and asked in confusion, "What's that green on it?" "Mustard." "Mustard." Gu Jinglian's face darkened and darkened. The groomsmen saw that his face had changed and immediately volunteered, "We will take all of it." "Mr. Gu, you don't have to eat it." Seeing that the groomsmen wanted to take all of it, the bridesmaids objected firmly. "No, the groom has to eat it too. This is the rule of the game. We can't go against it." Gu Jinglian was not a man who would drag his feet. He picked up a piece and took a bite. The power of toast with mustard was not to be underestimated. With just one bite, Gu Jinglian's originally fair and handsome face was like a volcano erupting. Blood rushed to his head, and it was so red that it looked like it was dripping blood. "Cough, cough." Gu Jinglian covered his mouth and choked. However, the bridesmaids said that if he did not eat the mustard toast, the bridesmaids would not let him in. There were a few more checkpoints inside. Gu Jinglian had no choice but to bite the bullet and eat all the toast. However, he felt uncomfortable after eating it. It was spicy. Choke. He felt like his lungs were burning. The groom has eaten. The groomsmen should hurry up too. Oh, the groomsmen took the toast pitifully. They took a deep breath and took a bite of the toast with their eyes closed. In an instant, everyone's faces turned red. They could not eat or vomit. What was even worse was that there was no purified water to serve them. Just by swallowing the toast dry, half of the people were gone. The bridesmaids and sisters laughed gloatingly. Among so many people, Gu Jinglian was the only one with the strongest mental fortitude. He was still standing after eating. Someone complained, "Su Feng, it's all your fault. If you hadn't knocked the ribbon off, we wouldn't have to eat this thing. There's so much toast. Eat it all." The groomsmen gave the leftover toast to the culprit. The latter had no choice but to swallow his grievance and finish all the toast. Usually, when Gu Jinglian was around, these people would never dare to be rash. Chapter 37:20. Since it was a joyous occasion, they were certain that Gu Jinglian would not act up on such a joyous occasion. Hence, they went all out. There was a long corridor leading to the boudoir, and it was covered with shiatsu boards. "What are these?" The groomsmen squatted on the ground and touched them with their hands. They did not feel anything just by touching them, but if they took off their shoes and stepped on them directly, the feeling was indescribable. "How do we do this?" The bridesmaid said. "Groomsmen, take off your shoes and carry the groom over." Gu Jinglian was speechless. The groomsmen and the band of brothers fell silent. This was King crazy. "If you don't pass this obstacle, you can't enter this door." The bridesmaid spoke again, their attitude firm. The band of brothers had nothing to say. They exchanged glances with the groomsmen and had no choice but to take off their shoes and try stepping on the shiatsu board. It was itchy and painful, so they immediately retracted their feet. I'd rather step on the tip of a knife than step on this thing. That's right. It makes the soles of my feet itchy and painful. The bridesmaids laughed. No way. Gu Jinglian's expression turned cold. Hurry up. Since the devil had spoken, the others did not dare to delay. They quickly took off their shoes and lifted Gu Jinglian up. Two of them held his arms, and another two lifted his long legs. The four of them formed a human palanquin and carried Gu Jinglian onto the shiatsu board. The group of people wailed in pain. All sorts of screams were heard. Sister-in-law, spare us. Sister-in-law, it hurts. Hurry up and come out to help us. Sister-in-law, let us go. We came here sincerely to pick up the bride. The group of people wailed like ghosts and howled like wolves, but there was no response from inside the door. It seemed that Chu Ho was determined to ignore them. The band of brothers could only grit their teeth and close their eyes. They endured the excruciating pain in the soles of their feet and carried Gu Jinglian to the door. The shiatsu board was only a few meters long, but it took them a few minutes. The brothers put Gu Jinglian down. The groomsmen also took off their shoes and walked over. They knocked on the door and said flatteringly, Sister-in-law, we're here. Open the door. Inside, the sisters and bridesmaids were blocking the door, but they did not let him in. Gu Jinglian turned the door handle, but the door was locked from the inside. It seemed that it would not be easy to get in. The groomsmen were also sensible. They immediately stuffed a large amount of red packets into the gap of the door. However, even after a large stack of red packets was stuffed in, the bridesmaid inside only cared about taking the red packets and refused to open the door. Open the door. I've given you so many red packets. Why won't you let me in? That's right. We groom can't wait. There's not much time left. Don't miss the auspicious hour. Groom, did you see the ribbon under the door? When Gu Jinglian heard this, he looked down. Sure enough, there were a few red ribbons under the door. I saw it. One of the ribbons is tied to the bride's wrist. If you can pick the ribbon tied to the bride's wrist, you can enter the door. Gu Jinglian squatted at the door and counted. There were a total of 10 red ribbons. However, only one of the 10 ribbons was tied to Chu Ho's wrist. It seemed that it would be difficult to pick that one. The groomsmen also became nervous. Chapter 37:21. The best man patted his chest and said, Push-ups are nothing. Mr. Gu, don't worry about it. We can do 100 push-ups evenly. As soon as he finished speaking, the person behind the door said slowly, It's not that everyone has to do 100 push-ups. It's that everyone has to do 100 push-ups. Everyone was silent. That's too harsh. That's right. How is it possible to pick 1 out of 10 in such a short time? The bridesmaid inside said disapprovingly, I just heard someone say that push-ups are nothing. Everyone was silent again. 100 push-ups it is. It's not like you can't do it. Gu Jinglian directly picked one and pulled it out in one go. There was a burst of booing in the room. That's wrong, that's wrong. 100 push-ups. 100 push-ups take up too much time. 50. 50 would be more efficient. Then give the remaining 50 to him in a red packet. Since the bridesmaid had spoken, the best man naturally quickly stuffed the red packet through the crack of the door. There were only red packets. Anything that could be solved with red packets was a small matter. After stuffing the red packets, the best man nimbly finished the 50 push-ups. These 50 push-ups were naturally a piece of cake for Gu Jinglian. In just a few minutes, he finished all the push-ups. Continue. There were only 9 ribbons left. In the name of it, this game of picking up the bride was a test of telepathy. However, in reality, it was purely based on luck. If it was purely based on luck, it would be hard to say. Probability was the most difficult thing to figure out. Gu Jinglian narrowed his eyes and looked at the ribbons one by one. He carefully compared them and suddenly realized that there was something fishy about one of the ribbons. There were obvious signs of knot. Gu Jinglian immediately grabbed the ribbon and pulled it back. As expected, this ribbon was connected to the ribbon on the bride's wrist. It immediately tightened. When the best man saw this, he was surprised that Gu Jinglian could pick the ribbon so quickly. While looking at him covetously, they asked, "Is this the one?" "Yes." It sounded like the bridesmaid's answer was a little reluctant. It seemed that this was the one. "Can you open the door now?" The best man said angrily, "You just said that as long as we get the ribbon, we can go in and pick up the bride. Open the door." The bridesmaids at the door did not seem to dare to make things too difficult for Gu Jinglian. Although they were very reluctant, they had no choice but to open the door. As soon as the door opened a crack, the groomsmen rushed forward and pushed the door open with force. Gu Jinglian walked in casually. As soon as he appeared in the boudoir, he was dressed in a suit and had an extraordinary aura. In a traditional wedding ceremony, the groom would often go out looking good, but in the process of receiving the bride, he would be embarrassed by the bridesmaids. However, this was where Gu Jinglian's power lay. With him present, no one dared to make things difficult for him. In just half an hour, Gu Jinglian had easily entered her room. It had to be said that Gu Jinglian was somewhat frightening. No one dared to offend the demon king of the Gu clan. Even the members of the Gu family stepped back because of Gu Jinglian's aura. Chapter 3722. Gu Jinglian walked in. Naturally, the bridesmaids had prepared a series of game shows. However, Gu Jinglian had already prepared for it. The groomsmen that he had formed were all talented gamers. They were all experts in nightclubs. Thus, each of them showed their prowess and resolved many difficult and dangerous games. The bridesmaids racked their brains and used all their tricks. However, when faced with Gu Jinglian's groomsmen, they were at their wits' end. The photographer in charge of the itinerary immediately said, "Groom, lift the bride's veil and kiss the bride." As he spoke, the photographer raised the camera and aimed it at Gu Jinglian. Obviously, he wanted to capture this classic scene. Gu Jinglian walked to the bedside and looked at Chu Ho, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed. She was wearing a traditional Chinese and Phoenix robe and a red veil. She looked very charming. From the moment he walked in until now, she had not said a word. She had been silent the entire time. Was she nervous? Gu Jinglian was a little doubtful. This was the first time in her life that she had experienced a wedding. Could she be so nervous that she could not speak? Just as he was about to reach out and lift Chu Ho's veil, the photographer immediately said, "Does the groom want to say a few words to the bride?" Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows and looked at him with some confusion. "Say what?" "Some romantic confessions. Or you can say some promises." "I didn't prepare anything." Everyone was silent. However, Gu Jinglian's reaction was not very surprising. After all, with his personality, he might not be able to lower himself to prepare some mushy and pretentious confessions. He had never cared about things that were too superficial and superficial. The photographer was still encouraging him. To say a few words, Gu Jinglian pursed his lips. His gloomy expression made everyone present feel that the atmosphere was a little cold. The aura that emanated from his body filled every inch of the room. Even the cameraman was shivering from the cold. So cold, so scary. He was not a member of the Gu family. Instead, he was a photographer that Uncle Fu had specially hired to record every happy moment of the wedding. Uncle Fu had specially instructed him to make the video as heartwarming and romantic as possible. He wanted to make it into a video so that he could keep it as a precious memory in the future. However, this bridegroom was quite uncooperative. The photographer silently picked up his DSLR with an expression that said, "Please go ahead." He didn't dare to say anything else. Gu Jinglian turned around and his gaze fell on the bride. He gently reached out his hands and slowly lifted the corner of the veil. Everyone was so nervous that they held their breaths. The bridesmaids, on the other hand, were grinning wickedly. As the veil was slowly lifted, what was revealed was not Chu Ho's delicate and beautiful face, but a man's extremely rough jaw. Then, the face of an unfamiliar man was exposed in front of Gu Jinglian. The bride wasn't Chu Ho. The person sitting on the bed was only wearing the wedding gown and a veil. Until now, he had not realized that the bride on the bed was not Chu Ho at all. Gu Jinglian was speechless. The bride had been switched. He had deliberately broken in, but he did not expect that the bride he had prepared to welcome would disappear into thin air and be replaced by a rough stranger. The *M in it. Chapter 37:23. The scene froze for a moment, and the air seemed to have frozen. After a long period of dead silence, the crowd suddenly burst into laughter. Ha ha ha! Even the groomsmen fell to the ground laughing. This scene was really too impactful. Gu Jinglian stood in front of the bed in his suit, his face ashen. However, on the bed, there was a man wearing a phoenix coronet and a red robe. It was really frightening. The fake bride actually acted coy and pretended to be a woman as she threw herself at Gu Jinglian and said coquettishly in a rough voice, "Groom, what's wrong with you? I've been waiting for you for a long time." The crowd roared with laughter again. However, Gu Jinglian smiled and stared at him coldly. In the next second, a voice as cold as ice escaped from his throat. "Where is she?" Whoosh. It was as if the Arctic wind had blown past. The people present could not laugh at all. It was as if they had been frozen into ice sculptures. It was so cold. Originally, they had good intentions. They wanted to add some fun to the wedding and make it more festive. However, Gu Jinglian did not seem to like it very much. Not happy. Such a joke. He looked coldly at the fake bride on the bed and said indifferently, "If you don't hand her over, I'll break your bones." Gulp. Gulp. Everyone subconsciously swallowed and trembled in fear. Save me. This must be the scariest groom in history. Seeing that no one spoke, Gu Jinglian turned around abruptly. His gaze fell on the bridesmaids, and he questioned, "Where's the bride?" She's here. Next door." Upon hearing this, Gu Jinglian left the group of people in the room and strode towards the room next door. The room next door was not locked from the inside. Gu Jinglian turned the doorknob and pushed the door open. The room next door was also decorated with a festive atmosphere. It was decorated in an antique style, with a large bed made of solid wood and a Chinese dressing mirror. A bride was sitting on a chair in front of the Chinese-style mirror. Her red veil covered her entire face, so her appearance could not be seen clearly. However, this time, Gu Jinglian was a little more careful. He observed carefully. Based on the outline of the bride's body, he was almost certain that the bride in front of him was the real Chu Ho. When Chu Ho heard someone approaching the room, he felt inexplicably nervous. For some reason, she could not see who the person in front of her was because of the red veil covering her face. However, she was certain that the person in front of her was Gu Jinglian. The familiar temperament, the cold aura. She was sure. He was here. Chu Ho actually felt a little nervous. Her fingers were intertwined, and her palms were covered in a thin layer of sweat. Gu Jinglian looked at her, but he was at a loss for words. He actually did not know what to say. The groomsmen and bridesmaids also rushed into the room. The room was not very big, so the others could only stand outside the door and watch. However, they saw Gu Jinglian standing in front of Chu Ho, not saying a word for a long time. "Bride, the groom is here to pick you up," one of the groomsmen said enthusiastically, but this made Chu Ho even more nervous. Gu Jinglian gently squatted down. His usually cold and arrogant expression showed a rare tenderness. He had never been good with words. In his silence, he reached out and gently placed his hand on the back of hers. His large palm lifted her hand and wrapped it in his palm. Her hand was not as delicate as other women's. Years of training had left a thin layer of calluses on her palm. Chapter 37:24. Holding her warm hand, ripples appeared in Gu Jinglian's heart. An imperceptible tenderness spread out in circles without a trace. Gu Jinglian gently rubbed her hand and asked calmly, "Come with me, okay?" Chu didn't speak. Her red lips opened, but they were so dry that she couldn't form a coherent sentence. The bridesmaid reminded him carefully, "Groom, the bride's shoes have been hidden. You have to find them before you can leave." When Gu Jinglian heard this, he suddenly stood up and began to search the room. Even with his searching skills, he couldn't find the red wedding shoes that the bridesmaids had tried so hard to hide. The groomsmen were also anxious. Where are the shoes? However, they knew how to deal with this situation. They immediately walked to the bridesmaids with more than 10 red packets and smiled ingratiatingly. "Good sister, where did you hide the bride's wedding shoes?" The bridesmaids exchanged playful glances with each other. "How can we give you a hint so casually?" If you want to give us a hint, you should at least give us something." The groomsmen looked at each other. They knew that this amount of red packets wasn't enough to get them to reveal anything. Thus, they took out all the red packets from their bags and presented them to the bridesmaids. "Good sister, this should be enough. You should be able to give us a hint now." The bridesmaids accepted the red packets with a smile and winked mysteriously. Isn't there a saying that goes, 100 years of cultivation is needed to cross the sea on the same boat? 100 years of cultivation is needed to cross the sea on the same boat? This time, everyone was even more puzzled. How could there be a boat in such a small room? 100 years of cultivation is needed to cross the sea on the same boat? Could it be that the wedding shoes were hidden in the model of the boat? Is there a model of the boat in the room? Yes, the model of the boat might be placed together with the model. The groomsmen started to suggest ideas. However, when they said this, the bridesmaids laughed in disdain. What idiots! They already said that it was a hint. If there really was a model of the boat, how could they give such an obvious hint? While the groomsmen were searching for the model of the ship in the room, Gu Jinglian strode to the bed, lifted the quilt with one hand, and grabbed the pillow. Everyone followed his gaze and saw a pair of bright red wedding shoes quietly hidden under the pillow. At this moment, everyone finally understood. The hint of the phrase, 100 years of cultivation leads to crossing the same boat, should be the next sentence. 1,000 years of cultivation leads to sleeping on the same pillow. This sleeping on the same pillow, wasn't the wedding shoes hidden under the pillow? It had to be said that these bridesmaids were quite smart. They were quite particular about hiding the wedding shoes. At the same time, she was impressed by Gu Jinglian's shrewdness. He immediately guessed the hiding place of the wedding shoes. After finding the wedding shoes, Gu Jinglian walked over to Chuho with them. He looked at her deeply and suddenly knelt on one knee. He gently lifted one of Chu He's legs, and under the fringed hem of her skirt, a fair and delicate foot fell into his palm. He held her foot with one hand and slowly put a red-high heel on her heel with the other. When he had put on the wedding shoes for her, Gu Jinglian looked up and gently lifted the veil. At this moment, Chuho's face was extremely red with embarrassment. Chapter 3725. Gu Jinglian also noticed her blushing face. Although she had applied blush on her face, he could still tell if it was blush or shyness. Knowing that she was shy, Gu Jinglian did not point it out. Instead, he asked seriously, "Can I kiss my bride now?" Chuho pursed her lips, but her shoulders shrunk. She did not expect Gu Jinglian to be like other men and say things that made one's heart pound like thunder. However, when he said that, she did not feel that he was being frivolous. Instead, she felt a sweet feeling growing from the bottom of her heart. Everyone saw that she did not move and did not give a definite answer. They cheered enthusiastically. Gu Jinglian gave a rare smile. This was probably the first sincere smile he had given since he stepped into this room. "Close your eyes," he said. Chuho was reluctant at first, but Gu Jinglian's burning gaze fell on her face. She did not think too much and closed her eyes. Gu Jinglian lowered his head and gently covered her lips. This was the first time he had kissed her so gently. It was just a light touch, but it was more confusing than a passionate kiss. He kissed her slowly, but Chuho felt that her heart was beating faster and faster. She even felt like she was about to suffocate. The faster her heart beat, the more guilty she felt. It was as if her strong heartbeat would reach his ears. Gu Jinglian looked up and smiled at her. She thought that her heartbeat had been spied on by him, and she felt even more embarrassed. She had experienced life and death, and had also passed through the gates of hell. However, no matter how thrilling the experience was, it had never made her change her expression. But now, the color of her face changed again and again. In the end, it became the most beautiful color in Gu Jinglian's eyes. Gu Jinglian lifted her up. Chuho's blood immediately rushed to her head, and she did not know what was going on. She subconsciously lowered her head and buried her face in his chest. She only heard someone laughing and saying, "The bride is shy. The bride is so beautiful. But why is your face so red? Did you use too much blush?" When Chuho heard this, he lowered his head shyly. She did not even know how she got into the car. It was only when Gu Jinglian put her down in the back seat that she realized she was already in the wedding car. Gu Jinglian was surprised to see her blushing face. In his impression, Chu Ho was an extremely introverted person, but he was not a person who blushed easily. Perhaps it was because Gu Jinglian had always appeared cold and aloof, but he did not know that when she blushed, it was too much. However, he didn't say anything in front of outsiders. It was only after they got into the car that a certain man began to make fun of her. "Why is your face so red?" It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned it. Now that he mentioned it, Chu Ho felt even more uneasy. She raised her hand to touch her face and realized that her face was very hot. She immediately explained, "Oh, maybe it's too hot. The sun isn't very bright today. Why are you feeling hot?" Gu Jinglian glanced at her. "Are your clothes very thick?" Yeah." She actually responded. How could Gu Jinglian not see that she was blushing because of shyness? She actually said that her blush was due to the heat in front of him. Therefore, he wanted to expose her hypocrisy, so he actually unbuttoned her clothes. Chapter 37:26. Chu Ho was shocked by the man's sudden action. She retreated and grabbed his wrist. She said angrily, "What are you doing? I think you're hot." Chu Ho was speechless. "I was just joking. You don't look like someone who would make a cold joke." Chu Ho was speechless again. She turned her head away angrily and did not look at him anymore. Gu Jinglian found it interesting. She actually had the delicate side of a little woman, but she was actually quite cute. The car ride was not far, but the journey took a long time. Perhaps because of the wedding, the two of them were sitting in the car now, but their identities were completely different. She was his wife, and he was her husband. Therefore, the change in their identities gave people a different feeling. She was a little uneasy, but Gu Jinglian was very calm and did not feel uneasy at all. It was said that during a wedding, men would be nervous, touched, surprised, and even cry. However, when it came to Gu Jinglian, he was calm and did not have any extra expression. He was too calm. Chu Ho was affected by him and gradually calmed down. The wedding was arranged in an orderly manner. Uncle Fu was very efficient. There was nothing to worry about. As he said, Chu Ho only needed to wear the wedding dress. Everything else had been arranged properly. Even the accident at the wedding had been predicted. The wedding car suddenly slowed down. The man sitting in the front passenger seat suddenly said in a low voice, "Master, Uncle Fu was right. The Meng family is chasing after us." The Meng family was also a big family in the capital. A few generations ago, they were also a rich and powerful family. However, in recent years, they had some conflicts with the Gu family in business. Most importantly, the Meng family's power was also a little dark. Therefore, when Gu Jinglian's wedding was held, the Meng family naturally wanted to take revenge on the Gu family and cause trouble. However, Uncle Fu was not as smart as he was. He had already predicted this and planned the route in advance. The roads in the capital were well connected. This was something that had already been planned in advance. Gu Jinglian said, "Follow the route and go around them." Understood. After the car passed a traffic light, it sped towards another road. There were many policemen on the road near the center, so it was naturally difficult to do anything. If it was a small road, it would be a different story. Gu Jinglian naturally did not want these things to happen. After all, it was their wedding day, and no one wanted to be unlucky. However, Gu Jinglian was not so easy to deal with when the unlucky person came knocking on his door. However, one day, Gu Jinglian instructed his subordinates in advance that it was okay to fight, but not to draw blood. At most, they would break a few bones, but there was no need to draw blood. Regardless of whether it was his own blood or the enemy's blood, he should not see it. However, it could also be foreseen that the Meng family would definitely bring weapons when they came. However, the people from the Gu family weren't weak either. Not to mention bringing knives. Even if they brought guns, they wouldn't be able to cause any bloodshed. The convoy drove to another road, and there was no one around. The people from the Meng family also became arrogant. They rushed over without restraint and directly stopped the Gu family's convoy. The car stopped. Gu Jinglian said to Chu Ho, "Stay in the car. Don't move." Okay. Chu Ho also appeared very calm. Uncle Fu had also told her about this, so that she wouldn't make a fuss if something unexpected happened. Chapter 37:27. However, Chuho did not think much of it. With Gu Jinglian's identity and background, it was inevitable that something like this would happen. The people from the Meng family got out of the car and started cursing. Some of them were holding iron rods, while others were holding machetes. It was obvious that they were going to fight to the death. Gu Jinglian scoffed. He had never taken a small character like the Meng family seriously. What era was it now? They were still behaving like third-rate hooligans. The people from the Gu family also got out of the car. The people who were hiding by the roadside also surrounded them. As soon as Gu Jinglian pushed open the door, the people from the Meng family saw him and swarmed toward him dauntlessly. Two people broke through the encirclement. They raised the iron rods in their hands and waved them at him. Gu Jinglian did not even look at him. He did not even raise his hand, which was in his trousers. He raised his leg and kicked the man to the ground. He turned around and kicked the other man's calf. The other man knelt on the ground on the spot and could no longer stand up. It turned out that this kick had broken his knee. Gu Jinglian rarely had the chance to show his skills. However, this did not mean that he could not deal with it when he encountered an accident. In other words, the best fighter in the Gu family was standing in front of him. He still had to think carefully about how to deal with him. Such a small role was not worth watching. Chuho sat in the car, but he was a little nervous. Through the window, he saw Gu Jinglian's figure disappear into the crowd. He did not know where he was. There was fighting outside, and the roars were intense. People kept flying out of the crowd. They were really flying. They lay on the ground and wailed. Some could get up, while others twitched and struggled on the ground. They could not get up no matter what. However, the people from the Gu family were ruthless. They were ruthless, but there was not a single drop of blood. Today was Master Gu's big day. No blood could be seen. It was bad luck. Even though many people from the Meng family came with knives, there was no blood. Just as Chuho was feeling nervous, he caught a glimpse of a bareback man with a tattoo of Guan Yu on his back. He was sneaking toward the wedding car. He deliberately avoided the eyes of the Gu family. Plus, he was not very strong, so it was easy for people to overlook him. Chuho raised his eyebrows in confusion. Why? Was this man here to kidnap her? Seeing that she was sitting in the car, he wanted to do something to her? Chuho smiled and leaned against the car door. When the driver saw this, before he could stop him, Chuho immediately unlocked the car and opened the door. This saved the man from smashing the car window and door with a stick. Chuho got out of the car in a bright red gown. The man was stunned. How could a woman be so daring? He had only seen her cowering in a corner, but he had never thought that she would be so brazen as to face him head-on. The man grinned. You're very brave, aren't you? Chuho asked, what do you want? What? The man smirked. F*CKU. Can you do it? Sure. Chuho's expression was very cold. He added, if you have the ability. When the man heard this, he found it even more interesting. He laughed and rushed toward her. He waved the metal rod in his hand toward her forehead. Chuho dodged nimbly. She turned sideways and raised her hand. She grabbed the man's wrist tightly and twisted it. The man screamed, and the metal rod in his hand fell to the ground with a clang. Chapter 37:28. As Chuho said this, she sneered and grabbed the man's neck. She pressed him against the wall, clenched her fist, and punched his lower abdomen. The man originally thought that she was at most a showy fighter, but who would have thought that this woman was not just a showy fighter, but a real fighter? If this punch landed on his nose bridge would break into 3 pieces. Ah! The man grimaced in pain and stared at her in shock. Chuho also knew that she could not afford to see blood today. Otherwise, she would have punched him in the face. Get lost if you don't want to die. Chuhi threw him to the side. The man fell to the ground, but immediately got up. Die. If you're so capable, why don't you kill me today? The man looked like a ruffian from the lowest rung of the Hay society. He was obviously trying to disgust Chuho on purpose. He knew that today was her wedding day and that no blood should be spilled, but he still wanted to disgust her. If you're so capable, why don't you kill me? Today is your wedding day. If you spill some blood, I won't die in vain. When Chuho heard this, she smiled and walked up to him. She grabbed him by the collar and said meaningfully, If there's no blood, I can make you wish you were dead. In the past, when she was in the mercenary corps, she had seen and suffered torture without blood. If there was no blood, she could make him wish he was dead. When Gu Jinglian returned to the car after dealing with the small fries, he saw a person lying on the ground. However, although he could tell that it was a person, he did not look human anymore. His limbs were bent at an extremely twisted angle, and there were many fractures, especially below the knee, which was bent at a 90-degree angle. It was horrifying. Just by looking at the tattoos on his body, he could tell that this was a fighter from the Meng family. On the other hand, Chu-Ho was still sitting in the car in a dignified manner, as if she was still a beautiful and reserved bride. What happened? The chauffeur lowered the car window and said softly, Master Gu, what's going on? Gu Jinglian stepped on the chest of the man on the ground and pressed down lightly. The man suddenly opened his eyes and gasped in pain, but he could not scream. He was still alive. His frown deepened as he guessed who was behind this. His attack was ruthless, but he had a good grasp of the situation. One could imagine how painful it must have been for this person to have all 4 of his limbs broken. However, not a drop of blood could be seen, and he was still alive. It must be Chu-Ho's doing. However, who asked this man to come to him so eagerly? He thought that the bride was easy to bully and could be bullied by anyone. He thought that if Gu Jinglian was not around, he could take advantage of the situation. He was thinking too much. Although Chu-Ho's skills were below his, he was not weak. Just how suicidal was this person to send himself to death? The driver still had lingering fears. At first, he was worried that Chu-Ho was in danger, but when he saw Chu-Ho's skills, he was terrified. What terrifying strength! She was indeed Master Gu's wife. Her strength was comparable to Master Gu's. On the scene, more than half of the Meng family's people were on the ground. Those who were left were the new members of the Meng family. Now, more people from the Gu family had arrived at the scene. Seeing that they had the advantage in numbers, it was difficult to resist. However, due to the Meng family's orders, they did not dare to advance or retreat. Chapter 37:29. They had all come to the capital from different places in order to earn a living. The Meng family had taken them in and taken the money, so they had to work for them. However, even if they had taken the money, they couldn't risk their lives, right? Hence, they hesitated and froze. No one dared to step forward or back away. After the Gu family members had boarded the motorcade, a portion of them stayed behind to guard the scene. The motorcade then looked at the Gu residents. The Meng family members were dumbfounded. Who would have thought that the Gu family members would be so fierce? They had not come here with the intention of arm wrestling with the Gu family. They just wanted to take the Gu family's joy away on such a joyous occasion. The Meng family originally wanted to catch the Gu family off guard. However, they did not expect Uncle Fu to be so experienced and foresee things. He had already taken this matter into account, so much so that he had calculated how they would travel and how much time they would waste. Even the timing of the motorcade's arrival at the Gu residence was extremely accurate. At the entrance of the Gu residence, the motorcade stopped in an orderly manner and formed a long line. At the entrance, the Gu family members stood in 2 rows and were fully armed. Most of the guests that Gu Jinglian had invited this time were of high status. Hence, to prevent unnecessary accidents, the security was very adequate. Uncle Fu and Aunt Qin stood at the entrance and greeted the guests. The guests gathered at the entrance. The best man opened the door for Gu Jinglian and got out of the car. The man went around to the other side of the car and opened the door. He stretched out his strong arms and carried Chu-Ho out of the car. Fireworks shot up into the sky. The colorful fireworks fell on them. Chu-Ho was shocked by the sudden sound of the fireworks. She could not help but shrink into his arms. This inadvertent dependence was obvious. Gu Jinglian laughed and said playfully, "When I saw you fighting earlier, you weren't so timid. You're still talking about it." Chu-Ho said angrily, "Why did this happen today? It's fine if there's no blood, but when there's blood, I feel unlucky." When Gu Jinglian heard this, his eyes turned cold. "After the wedding, I will settle the score with the Meng family." After a pause, Gu Jinglian smiled and changed the topic. "However, since today is our wedding, you don't have to think too much. Leave everything to me. Hand it to you? Fortunately, I didn't give it to you. However, fortunately, I have some skills. It won't be a problem to have a few more of those shrimp soldiers and crab generals." As Chu-ho spoke, he raised his head, his eyes filled with pride. In that case, Gu Jinglian should quickly go along with her thoughts and praise her. A woman who is worthy of me. Gu Jinglian is naturally not an ordinary person. Chu-ho could not help but laugh. "Are you praising me or yourself? You won't lose out if you praise me." Gu Jinglian lowered his eyes and stared into her eyes. "Only a man like me is worthy of you." Chu-ho was amused by him, but she pursed her lips and held back her laughter. "Speaking of which, aren't you tired of carrying me like this?" From the entrance to the wedding room, they had to walk through several winding corridors like this. They had to pass through 3 courtyards, all of which were landscape courtyards. She was very thin, but with her height, she definitely wasn't light. An ordinary man would be panting from exhaustion after carrying her for a while.